Chapter 828. The barrier's thickness and energy weakened at a visible rate. When it completely vanished, it would be time to leave one's name. Xiao Qin and Ying Qiong each wore a cloak, hiding their identities. Then they blended into the crowd and looked around. Of the younger generation, only 4 people came. Xiao Chen recognized one of them. It looked like Di Wuk, Wang Can, and Kong Yuan's group had not arrived yet. That person was Yan Shi-san. He wore black and held the heavenly ice sword in his hand. He stood at the side with a grave and stern expression, staring at the sage mark monument. Yan Shi-san had been a half-sage for many years. With the heavenly dew divine spring as an opportunity, he advanced to martial sage. This did not exceed Xiao Chen's expectations. After Ying Qiong's introduction, Xiao Chen gained a better understanding of the other 4. They were geniuses of the other races. The factions they belonged to were similar to the sovereign, noble clans of the human race. Xiao Chen paid special attention to a man with bare arms. If he did not see wrong, this person walked the path of advancing to martial sage with the physical body alone. Just by relying on his physical body, this person directly advanced to martial sage. After asking Ying Qiong, Xiao Chen learned that this person was called Kuei Do, a member of the corpse race. Kuei Do's ancestor was the famous Iron Hand sovereign of the profound domain. He was a legendary character who advanced to sovereign martial emperor by relying on his physical body alone. However, he had already left the corpse god palace and led his clan to settle down in the profound domain. As for the other 3, they did not leave a deep impression on Xiao Chen. Of course, it was not that they were not powerful. It was just that they did not leave a particularly outstanding impression on Xiao Chen. Without a doubt, anyone who could advance to martial sage before the age of 30 was not a minor character. The Peacock King's descendant Kong Yuan is here. Suddenly, Ying Qiong said, the person with him seems to be the Fox King's descendant, Yuan Su. Xiao Chen looked over and saw a handsome man in blue beside Kong Yuan. That man had the unique elegance of a silver moon spirit fox. He was even more handsome than Xian Yu, whom Xiao Chen had met before. However, he had the bloodline of a king. It diluted the feminine aura of the silver moon spirit fox race, making him look even more charming. It's said that he's even stronger than Kong Yuan. When the heavenly dew divine spring opened last time, he happened to be at the crucial moment of breaking through to the 5th tail, so he couldn't make it in time, Ying Qiong whispered to Xiao Chen. Of the 5 major races, the fiend race had the most people, but was indeed the weakest. This was because the fiend race only had 2 sovereign martial emperors, the Peacock King and the Fox King. When the descendants of the 2 sovereign martial emperors arrived, the fiend race martial sages present all followed their lead and stood behind them. The Fox King and the Peacock King were highly respected in the demon domain. Naturally, their descendants were widely respected as well. They were the focus of their own race and had high hopes for the 2 of them. They hoped that the 2 of them could fight for the demon race's honor and carve their names a little higher. Whoosh! A sinister wind blew overhead, and 8 illusory spirits carrying a white palanquin descended. These were the top figures of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race girl named Qing Qing, who had once scared Xiao Chen, walked out. After she came out, 3 more men and women appeared in the palanquin. She must have brought along the demonic geniuses of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race had fewer people, but 4 of them came. This proved that they were stronger than the fiend race. The inferior grade martial sages of the ghost race all gathered behind these 4 and started discussing in soft voices. It was fine if they did not come. However, the demonic geniuses of the younger generation did not stop once they arrived. After a while, the youths of the corpse race and the human race arrived almost at the same time. Of the corpse race's side, Xiao Chen only recognized Wang Ken, whom he had fought before. He did not recognize the others, only seeing them once in the heavenly dew divine spring. On the human race's side, The ones who came were all familiar. As expected, the son of the three holy masters had relied on the opportunity of the heavenly dew divine spring to break through the bottleneck that had plagued him for many years, advancing to martial sage in one go. Aside from these of the 7 giants, the 3 who had soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring by Wu Shiwei and Juanqi and Shui Lingling also relied on this opportunity to advance to martial sage. Shao Qin heaved a sigh of relief. If not for the breaking sage pill, which allowed him to advance to martial sage in advance, this group of people would have surpassed him. In the end, Shao Qin had only been a half-sage for less than a year. Compared to Juanqi and the others, who had been stuck there for at least 4 or 5 years, his accumulations were lacking. Shao Chen could not rely on the heavenly dew divine spring to raise his comprehension ability and break through the bottleneck. Even without the breaking sage pill, he could advance to martial sage in another year, no weaker than these people. However, by then it would be too late. The Sage Mark Monument would open only 10 years later. Hu Qi, a golden light, flashed, and Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter arrived, leading the 13 inferior grade martial sages of the deity race. As the light flickered, it immediately attracted the gazes of all the cultivators on the surrounding peaks. The remaining deity race cultivators all revealed fervent expressions. They quickly flew over and gathered behind Di Wuk and the others. Shao Qin found this strange. The deity race was ridiculously strong. Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter had already advanced to martial sage long ago. Now, they were peak inferior grade martial sages. Aside from these 2, the other 13 people who soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring previously had all advanced to martial sage as well. Furthermore, it was obvious that the number of people on their side was greater than that of the warriors from the other races. Strange. Didn't the humans say that a descendant of the Qing Emperor appeared? Why do I not see him? Could it be that he did not advance to martial sage? The golden barrier before the Sage Mark Monument weakened. The demonic geniuses of the various races had already arrived, but Shao Chen was still nowhere to be seen. Several people started muttering to themselves in doubt. Naturally, Shao Chen, who was mixed in with the human group, could not hear the discussions on the surrounding peaks. He would have to send out his spiritual sense to hear them from such a distance. Shao Chen wore the cloak, mainly to avoid trouble. He did not want the people of the other 3 sovereign noble clans to know of his whereabouts. As for what Ying Qiong was thinking, Shao Chen did not know. He could not be bothered to think about it, either. However, Shao Chen took note of the discussions of the surrounding martial sages. After a while, he gained a much better understanding of this Sage Mark Monument. As long as a cultivator got within 100 meters of the Sage Mark Monument, they would feel a huge pressure. This pressure came from the mysterious energy within the monument. This pressure was not formless. Not only would it affect the cultivator's mind, but it would also restrict the cultivator's ability to fly. The higher one flew, the greater the pressure. The higher one's name was carved on the monument, the more people would look at the cultivator in a different light. However, it did not mean that one would be able to carve their name on the monument just because they flew high. Carving words on the monument was not a simple matter. In the past Sage Mark monuments, there had been many ambitious people who wanted to carve their names higher, blindly trying to fly higher. However, these people could not endure the pressure when they were carving their names. Before they could finish writing, they were knocked back, missing out on the opportunity to carve their names. After carving one's name on the monument, it did not mean that it would not disappear forever. If a cultivator did not advance to martial emperor in the future, the name they left on the Sage Mark Monument would vanish after 1,000 years. If one climbed to the peak and became Emperor Wu, the name they carved would turn purple and vanish only after 5,000 years. Only when one became a sovereign martial emperor would their name turn gold. Only then would it last forever, existing with the monument, never to disappear. Under the hood, Shao Chen looked at the monument, which he could not see clearly due to the barrier. Then he revealed an interested expression. The monument was only 3 kilometers tall. If not for the fact that it was erected at the waist of the mountain, its height of 3 kilometers would be as ordinary as it could be among the many famous mountains of the Kunlun realm. However, such a monument recorded all the famous experts of the martial epoch in the past 100,000 years. Each monument represented a Kunlun realm. Just at this moment, the barrier vanished, and the 3-kilometer-tall sage mark monument revealed itself. From a few hundred meters away, Xiao Chen could clearly see the names on the monument. The first thing that entered his eyes were the golden names at the top of the monument. These names shone brilliantly under the refraction of the sun. Each name was a legend. When anyone saw the golden names of their race's cultivators, no matter who it was, they would feel yearning, reverence, longing, and pride. At first glance, Xiao Chen was attracted by these golden names. However, when he looked again, he shifted his gaze to the bottom of the monument. Compared to the golden names that everyone paid attention to, the names below did not seem to attract much attention. However, the names were densely packed together, several hundred times more than the golden names. They were like the cornerstone at the bottom of a pyramid. Xiao Chen slowly moved his gaze upwards. The further he looked, the less densely packed the names were. After 1,000 meters, there would be at most 10 names engraved on each row. On the 1-meter-wide stone tablet, the names were very sparse. 1 kilometer was also a dividing point. After 1 kilometer, one could vaguely see some purple names. 2 kilometers was another dividing line. When Xiao Chen looked further up, all the names were purple. Occasionally, he would even find a golden name. Even among the purple names, this golden light was very eye-catching. The moment it appeared, people would immediately notice it, forgetting about their surroundings. As Xiao Chen continued moving his gaze upwards, he fixed it on the 3-kilometer mark. There were only 2 names standing side by side. One was the Thunder King, and the other was the Qing Emperor. There were still 300 meters above Xiao Chen, the highest point of the entire monument. However, the 100 meters above the Qing Emperor was empty. There were no names at all. However, after this 100 meters, there was a large number of golden and glistening names. The denseness of the rows was flabbergasting. There were more than 20 names in each row, almost as dense as the row at the bottom. If one understood the history of the Kunlun realm's martial epoch, they would not find such a mysterious phenomenon strange. 1 stone monument was the entire Kunlun realm. This saying was not exaggerated. The densely packed names 100 meters above the Qing Emperor were densely packed. This represented the peak of the ancient era's martial epoch. During that era, martial emperors were as common as the clouds. Sages filled the streets, and sovereign martial emperors appeared one after another. Chapter 829. The remaining 100 meters of blank space was the time after the savage, desolate war of the emperors. The various races had weakened, their strength plummeting. The peak of the martial Tao was gone forever. This lasted until 10,000 years ago, when the strongest sovereign martial emperor of the ancient era, the Qing Emperor, appeared. Only then did he carve his name at the 3-kilometer mark that had not been carved for tens of thousands of years. Compared to the ancients, there was still a significant gap. Even the Qing Emperor could not touch the many legendary names of that magnificent era. However, the names of the Qing Emperor and the Thunder King still far surpassed the names of the sovereign martial emperors of the past 10,000 years. The area 100 meters below the 2 names was blank. There were no names at all. Only after 100 meters were some purple and gold names visible. Compared to the Qing Emperor, the Thunder King's gold name was much dimmer. The Qing Emperor's name was as dazzling as the stars. However, the Thunder King's name was just an ordinary gold. After seeing so many names, Xiao Chen guessed that the luster of the name had something to do with the strength of the person. The Thunder King had died mysteriously not long after advancing to sovereign martial emperor. Naturally, his strength could not compare to the Qing emperor at his peak. Seeing the two names side by side, Xiao Chen could not help but feel even more pity for the Thunder King. If nothing unexpected happened, the Thunder King might really be the second Qing emperor. The densely packed golden names were about 100 meters long. However, when the Sage Mark Monument reached the highest point, there was not a single name to be seen. Only blurry traces could be seen, but it was unclear who had left those traces and when they had been left behind. Where did these people go and where they were now? This had always been a mystery in the Kunlun realm. Several people guessed that those who could leave marks at the highest point might have become the legendary martial gods. However, no one in this world had ever seen a martial god. The legends about martial gods were only recorded in some documents. Most of the records were oral accounts that could not be verified. There were no actual examples. The martial god was still an illusory legend to all martial artists. The shock that the Sage Mark Monument brought to everyone lingered for a long time. After reading through this stone monument, it was like experiencing the entire history of the martial epic. Only after a long time did someone come back to his senses. With a light leap, he arrived in front of the stone tablet and was about to carve his name on it. Under the premise of guaranteeing a spot, it was naturally better to carve one's name as high as possible. Everyone would have a trace of vanity and a competitive heart. The number of people eager to give it a try kept increasing. Soon, the boundary of 1,000 meters was broken by someone. Names kept breaking the height of others. However, after half a day, no one had been able to break through the boundary point of 2 kilometers. A few middle-aged cultivators wanted to give it a try. In the end, they failed. They vomited blood and fell to the ground, losing their qualifications to enter the Sage Mark Monument. A figure flashed and landed below the Sage Mark Monument. When the other cultivators who were preparing to leave their names saw this person, they immediately stopped what they were doing and focused their gazes on him. The Peacock King's grandson, Kong Yuan, is here. It looks like he will be the first to break the 2-kilometer record today. The names that reached the 2-kilometer mark all became Emperor Wu. This person soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring and will definitely advance to martial emperor within 100 years. It looks like the 2-kilometer mark is not difficult for him. I wonder how far he can go. Back then, the Peacock King seemed to have left his name at the 2,500-meter mark. The higher one flies, the greater the pressure. Every 10 meters from the 2,000-meter mark, the pressure increases exponentially. Furthermore, one still has to leave their name in the air. This is a problem for anyone. It is hard to say how high he can go. As the first younger generation cultivator to step up, Kong Yuan received a lot of attention. Not only did all the cultivators here look over, but the cultivators watching from the surrounding peaks also focused their gazes on him. Hu Qi. Kong Yuan did not hesitate. He pushed off the ground and soared into the air. He did not feel any pressure within 1 kilometer. After 1 kilometer, Kong Yuan's expression turned grave, and his speed slowed significantly. After 1,500 meters, his thick eyebrows were already deeply knitted together. Clearly, the pressure was already significant. However, Kong Yuan was Kong Yuan after all. He did not disappoint the crowd and arrived at the 2,000-meter mark. The many fiend race cultivators all revealed smiles on their faces. However, that Kong Yuan did not show any intention of stopping. He continued to ascend. At this moment, Kong Yuan could see that Kong Yuan's face was practically twisted together as he gritted his teeth. Sweat covered Kong Yuan's forehead. Every 10 meters was exceptionally difficult. The fiend race cultivators could not help but break out in a cold sweat, feeling anxious for him. Kong Yuan arrived at the 2,500-meter mark after much difficulty. Then he saw a familiar name. That was his grandfather, one of the 2 remaining sovereign martial emperors of the fiend domain. Kong Yuan relaxed his frown and revealed a smile. As he hovered in the air, a short sword appeared in his hand. Then he carved his name beside the Peacock King's name, stroke by stroke. Stone fragments flew everywhere and light shone. The fiend race cultivators cheered thunderously. When Kong Yuan finished carving the last stroke, a beam of light entered his body and relieved the pressure he endured. As the fiend race cultivators looked at Kong Yuan like he was a hero, he slowly landed. Unexpectedly, the moment he made an appearance, he already tied with the Peacock King. The younger generation is truly unbelievable. As the first of the younger generation to make an appearance, Kong Yuan managed to achieve such a height. Not only did the fiend race cultivators rejoice, but the spectators were also slightly moved. The person who spoke was the physical body cultivator that Xiao Qin had paid special attention to earlier, the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant Kuei Do. Kong Yuan had just achieved such a height, yet he was looked down on. He felt angry in his heart. He said, "Kuei Do, don't spout such big words. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." Kuei Do bared his arms, revealing his bulging muscles and perfect curves. As he looked at the names on the sage mark monument, he said, "Now is the age of geniuses. If I still use the standards of the older generation to measure myself, I will be underestimating myself." Kong Yuan smiled coldly and said, "What is the point of saying so much? I'll say it again. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." The Iron Hand Sovereign and the Peacock King were both famous sovereign martial emperors of this generation. They were very strong and could shake up a region. The clash between their descendants immediately attracted the attention of several people. Kuei Do said calmly, "There is no need for you to say that. I am about to give it a try." Kuei Do leaped forward and arrived before the sage mark monument. Then he pushed off the ground and burst into the air. Kuei Do moved like an arrow, relying on the explosive power of his strong physical body. He crossed a height of 1 kilometer in an instant. Only when he reached a height of 2 kilometers did he slow down. A cold smile flashed in Kong Yuan's eyes. The true test was only starting now. The explosive power of a physical body cultivator was very strong. However, this was a battle of endurance. Once one's explosive power ran out, the formless pressure from the sage mark monument would instantly knock him back. However, before Kong Yuan's smile could freeze, Kuei Do pushed off the ground and soared up again. With a spurt of energy, he soared 550 meters. Kuei Do reached a height of 50 meters above Kong Yuan. Using his hand as a sword, he quickly finished carving his name. When he finished the final stroke, his figure wavered, and he landed firmly on the ground. When Kong Yuan saw his name on the sage mark monument surpassing him by 50 meters, his complexion paled in disbelief. The expressions of the many older generation martial sages and the martial monarchs, watching the excitement on the surrounding peaks, all changed slightly. The words, "The younger generation will surpass us in time," appeared in their hearts. Following that, the younger generation stepped out one after another. All sorts of height records were broken. From 2,500 meters to 2,900 meters, people continuously carved their names on the sage mark monument. In the previous sage mark monuments, those who could carve their names at a height of 2,000 meters would be regarded as absolute geniuses by everyone. However, the current scene truly broadened everyone's horizons. There were quite a few people who didn't reveal their expressions, but when they truly left their names, they were all moving and shocking everyone. Under the hood, Xiao Chen's gaze did not remain idle. He took advantage of this opportunity to pay attention to the hidden experts of the various races. The goal was not to leave their names. After entering the sage mark monument, the various treasures and spirit veins were the true targets. After observing for a while, Xiao Qin discovered some clues. Among the 4 people from the corpse race, there was a man with a mark on his forehead. This person remained silent. However, Wang Can's attitude toward this person was strangely respectful. Occasionally, he would lower his head and say something to this person. The mark on this person's forehead looked like a flower a very strange flower. Xiao Chun felt that it looked like the legendary departed spirit flower. However, the mark was too small, so he could not be sure. Xiao Chun had long since paid attention to the girl named Qing Qing from the ghost race. Now that he saw the martial sage, Xiao Chun found her even more unfathomable. Although the height at which the fiend race's Kong Yuan left his name had been surpassed repeatedly, Xiao Chun, who had seen Kong Yuan make a move before, did not think that he was much weaker than the others. Back then, Kong Yuan had blocked the combined martial technique of 13 deity race experts with a simple palm strike that had left a deep impression on Xiao Chun. However, what caught Xiao Chun's attention was the handsome man beside Kong Yuan, the descendant of the Fox King Yuan Su. The deity race cultivators have arrived. Just at this moment, a soft cry interrupted Xiao Chun's thoughts. Xiao Chun turned his head and saw 13 white-haired deity race cultivators arriving at the Sage Mark Monument together. Hu Qi. Light burst out as the 13 people advanced together. Before the eyes of the many cultivators, they continued to rise. Soon, they surpassed 2,500 meters. Startled cries rang out. All the cultivators present were stunned. Half of the people who could leave their names at 2,500 meters had already become sovereign martial emperors. Could it be that the deity race would give birth to 13 sovereign martial emperors in the future? Stone fragments flew everywhere. However, these 13 people only stopped when they reached 2,900 meters. Then their fingers released a golden light as they started to write their names. 2,900 meters. After the Thunder King, no one has been able to carve their name here in the past few thousand years. I heard that when these 13 people advanced to Martial Sage, the supreme deity monarch conferred them the title of Keepers of Light. Keepers is a title second only to the protector elders of the Thousand Deity Church. Clearly, these 13 people are extraordinary. These 13 people are already so incredible. In that case, how high must the divine Sun Di Wuk and the divine daughter Tianyushi reach? Chapter 830. The moment the deity race's 13 people made their move, the atmosphere immediately reached a climax. Cries of shock and discussion rang out endlessly. The surrounding peaks discussed this as well. The expressions of the other races all turned unsightly. After the deity race arrived in the Kunlun realm from the outer realm, they had been harboring the ambition of unifying the Kunlun realm ever since the Emperor War. Now that the deity race was in a flourishing age, the living space of the other races would probably be suppressed again. Whoosh! Perhaps because the deity race was so arrogant, the human race's Yan Shur-san, the fiend race's the Fox King's descendant Yuan Su, the ghost empress Shisun's disciple Qing Cheng, and the mysterious corpse race man with the mark on his forehead all made their move. On the Bushin Palace's side, the strongest of the three holy masters' disciples could no longer hold themselves back and took advantage of the situation to make their move. These people practically represented the strongest of the various races. They were all demonic geniuses among demonic geniuses, all of them outstanding talents. They could be said to be shining like the stars, resplendent and resplendent. Every one of their names would become a legend in the future, as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Only this Sage Mark monument could make them make their move together. The cultivators on the surrounding peaks and the various races all held their breaths, waiting to see if these 7 could turn the tide against the strong deity race. 2,000 meters, 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,950 meters. The 7 did not disappoint the crowd, successfully surpassing the 13 keepers of the deity race. Stone fragments flew everywhere, and sunlight shone on the faces of these 7 talents. The scene froze. It was like they were not carving names, but history. 1,000 years later, when all the names turned golden, history would become a legend, a myth passed down by later generations. The 7 landed and returned to the various races' teams. Thunderous cheers resounded. When Di-Wuk saw this scene, the light in his eyes flickered. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Tianyushi, how high do you think I can carve?" The white-haired divine daughter, Tianyushi, looked at the nameless mark at the top of the sage mark monument. She did not answer, remaining silent. The 13 keepers at the side answered one after another. The divine son is talented. In the future, he will definitely spread the glory of the deity race throughout the entire Kunlun realm. At the very least, he will be as famous as the Azure Demon. That's right. Back then, the Azure Demon had suppressed our god clan for more than 1,000 years. The divine son will definitely be as famous as him and push the god clan to another peak. Back then, when the deity race was at its peak, the Qing Emperor personally charged into the deity race's heavenly nation and killed a large number of deities. He even killed 4 or 5 deity kings that were as strong as sovereign martial emperors. Alone, Shao Chun knocked down the deity race from its peak. Then he invented the dragon tone art, allowing the Dragon's Gate to suppress the deity race for several thousand years. He left behind the title of Azure Demon in the God Clan, but there was no need to doubt his strength. Even the God Clan, who were his enemies, had to admit it. It was not an insult to be on the same level as the Azure Demon, but it was a great honor. The 13 guardians all thought so. Di-Wuk narrowed his eyes and looked at the golden name of the Qing Emperor on the sage mark monument. He said, "It is time for me to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor from 10,000 years ago." A beam of golden light shot out, and Di-Wuk soared up. After the 7 peak experts of the various races achieved impressive results, he finally made his move. The beam of golden light was like a rainbow soaring into the sky. It did not slow down even after flying for 2,000 meters. Only when it reached 2,500 meters did it slow down. The light vanished, and Shao Chen's figure appeared. Then he slowly climbed up before countless nervous gazes. He climbed to 2,800 meters, then to 2,900 meters. Then he continued, rising to 2,950 meters. Shao Chen looked at the names of the various races' cultivators and smiled faintly. Then he paused for a moment. Just when everyone thought that Shao Chen would not continue, Di-Wuk's white hair turned golden. Every strand of his golden hair gave off a bright light. He shouted, and his figure soared forward. Based on Shao Chen's explosive power, it seemed like he was going to charge past the 3-kilometer mark. However, when he reached the 3-kilometer mark, his figure paused. It was like he felt a huge pressure, nearly knocking him back down. Di-Wuk stopped thinking about breaking through the 3-kilometer mark. He started to quickly write his name, carving the words Di-Wuk beside the Thunder King Sangmu, reaching 3,000 meters, being on par with the Qing Emperor. After 5,000 years, someone had finally reached this level. A large group of deity race cultivators shouted excitedly. The nightmarish name of the Azure Demon had finally appeared in the deity race that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The 13 keepers of the deity race each sent out a beam of holy light, forming a 7-colored bridge in the air that extended to Di-Wuk's feet. Di-Wuk stood on the 7-colored bridge and looked down. Finally, his gaze stopped at the human group. He smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, you will not be able to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. I will have to leave it to Di-Wuk." Di-Wuk's lazy tone, coupled with his insufferably arrogant words, showed that he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to plant the seed of invincibility in the hearts of the demonic geniuses of the various races. Haha, Di-Wuk, it is not up to you to say that. Who is it that dared to refute Di-Wuk in front of everyone after he was on par with the Emperor? Everyone curiously searched for the source of the voice. They saw a black-cloaked cultivator walking out from the human group. Naturally, this person was Shao Chen. He had come to the sage mark monument mainly for the treasures in it. At the same time, he wanted to take a look at the true elites of the various races. He did not care much about whose name was carved higher and whose name was carved lower. Many years ago, the Thunder King had carved his name on par with the Qing emperors. However, so what? Now, it was clear whose name was more dazzling. The height of the name carved on the Sage Mark monument was more of a symbol. To cultivators, its only practical use was as a ticket to enter the Sage Mark monument. Even now, when all the geniuses of the various races were chasing after this so-called height, Xiao Chen's view did not change. He would not fight for this empty reputation. If he did not fight for this moment after 10,000 years, whose name was still on the Sage Mark monument and whose name was more dazzling would be judged by future generations. However, this Diwuk should not be like this. How could he continue the legend of the Qing emperor? There were some things that he needed to say. Under the cloak, no one could see Xiao Chen's appearance. Everyone tried to guess this person's identity. Is it your place to interrupt when our divine son is speaking? Diwuk had carved his name on par with the Qing emperors. Unexpectedly, a random nobody from somewhere mocked him for such a glorious matter. Two deity race cultivators immediately leaped out and charged at Xiao Chen. Of the cultivators who came to leave their names, the weakest was an inferior grade martial sage. The two deity race cultivators who leaped out looked like middle-aged men. Furthermore, they were middle-stage, inferior grade martial sages. They both executed the deity race's mental energy martial techniques and charged at Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. In the blink of an eye, the two arrived before Xiao Chen. Their mental energy origin chi had already turned into a ferocious beast and entered Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. If Xiao Chen could not quickly eliminate the mental energy that the two sent in, the two charging over would be able to severely injure him with one punch each. The physical body and quintessence of the deity race were no weaker than that of regular human cultivators. Mental energy martial techniques were just their innate abilities. Xiao Chen smiled coldly. These two were trying to turn him into an idiot, crippling him by entering his sea of consciousness so tyrannically. However, was it really that easy to enter Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness? The two ferocious beasts entered Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. Before they could do anything, they saw a drifting purple talisman flash with a purple light, and the two ferocious beasts were chopped in half. Electric light exploded, and the two halves of the ferocious beasts were blasted into nothing without being able to resist. The ferocious beasts, which contained the mental energy of the two, did not even have a chance to retreat before Xiao Chen killed them. When the two deity race cultivators got within 1 meter of Xiao Chen, they suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. Their complexions turned incredibly pale. Will of Thunder, hurry up and retreat. He has already erased our mental energy origin source. The two's eyes filled with horror. They felt so much regret that their intestines turned green. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen had comprehended a will. Furthermore, it was the will of Thunder which had the greatest destructive power against mental energy. If they had known, they would not have been so bold as to send their mental energy into Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. That would have been no different from suicide. Trying to run now? It is too late. Since the two wanted to kill him, naturally, Xiao Chen would not show any mercy. The 3 heavenly sage laws in his body flowed into his palm. Then he stretched out his hand, and a strong wind sucked the two over. The heavenly sage laws flowed through Xiao Chen's body as he quickly executed the Kun Peng divine fist that he inherited from the Kun Peng king. A huge shadow soared up behind Xiao Chen. That was the legendary divine bird, the Kun Peng. When it spread its wings, it blocked out the radiance of the blazing sun. At this moment, when Xiao Chen executed the Kun Peng with his heavenly sage laws, its might was several times stronger than before. The huge shadow covered the entire mountain. With the sound of wings flapping, a strong gust of wind blew and dust swirled around. Everyone involuntarily closed their eyes, and when they reopened their eyes, they found themselves in a daze. When they opened their eyes again, the Kuan Peng materialized by the heavenly sage laws flew somewhere in the sky. The two deity race cultivators preparing to beat up Xiao Chen into an idiot immediately turned into a flash of scarlet. He directly turned into a bloody light, his bones shattered, and he died without a complete corpse. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen killed two deity race cultivators. The place fell silent. Everyone's expressions turned grave. Xiao Chen killed the deity race cultivators in front of Diwok. In this era where the deity race was unstoppable, even the older generation cultivators did not dare to do such a thing. Everyone looked at Diwok, who was on the seven-colored bridge. Their hearts sank. They were in big trouble. Diwok showed an uncertain expression. As he looked at the mysterious cloaked man below, he said coldly, "Aren't you being a little too heavy-handed?" Xiao Chen's expression did not change. His eyes rippled like autumn water as he replied calmly, "Being too heavy-handed? If I were not capable, my mind would have been wiped clean. I would probably be an idiot by now." Chapter 831. If you want to be reasonable, I will be reasonable with you. If you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Others might be afraid of you, Diwok, but I am not. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and gently flung the cloak off his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he looked up at Diwok, his heart calm and indifferent. "It's the white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen." He advanced to martial sage. When Xiao Chen revealed his true appearance, he immediately elicited startled cries from the crowd. The news of the Qing Emperor's descendant appearing had already spread from the Tianwu domain to the entire Kunlun realm. When the Sage Mark monument appeared, many people guessed whether Xiao Chen could rush over or not. After all, he had only advanced to half-sage for a short time, even if he was the Qing Emperor's descendant. Not many people thought that Xiao Chen could advance to martial sage in such a short time. His appearance today could be considered a huge surprise. No wonder he flew into such a rage. Diwok's earlier words really touched his reverse scale. Those two deity race cultivators deserved to die. If he offended them now, he would be seeking death. However, it is too irrational to mess with Diwok now. Diwok advanced to martial sage a year ago. Furthermore, no one has seen him use his full power. Xiao Chen just advanced to martial sage. He is probably not a match for Diwok. All sorts of discussions rang out endlessly. No one had expected that the matter of leaving one's name, which should have ended here, would take such a turn. When Diwok, who was in the air, saw Xiao Chen's face, his expression relaxed instead. It was like he had been waiting for him. He smiled and said, "Indeed, it is as I expected. You have indeed advanced to martial sage. Do you dare to leave your name? Let me see the strength of the Qing Emperor's descendant. Let's see who can continue the legend of the Qing Emperor." Xiao Chen had always been very calm. Even though Diwok kept goading him, he did not get angry. 10,000 years from now, the future generations would judge whose light was more dazzling. The reason why he stood out was to express his attitude and continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. It was indeed not his place to say such words. On the seven-colored arch bridge, Diwok was full of confidence, as long as Xiao Chen dared to compete with him. The contingency plan he left behind could ruin Xiao Chen's reputation, and he wouldn't even be able to carve his name on it in front of the world. At that time, not only would he be able to suppress Xiao Chen's sharpness, but he would also be unable to recover from this setback. The story of the so-called Qing Emperor would end here, and the legend would be continued by him. Now that Xiao Chen had been provoked by his words, the plan was already half complete. The remaining half was waiting for Xiao Chen to take the bait. Diwok, it's really not your turn to continue the legend and glory of my ancestors. No matter how high you carve your name, it will have nothing to do with the Qing Emperor or me. I am not the Qing Emperor. I am Xiao Chen. However, since you want to compete, I will compete with you, Xiao Qin said softly. Then he leaped up and arrived before the Sage Mark Monument. The bottom 10 meters of the Sage Mark Monument was empty. No one would carve their name here. Even if they could not do so, they would fly 30 or 40 meters before carving their name. However, they did not know that time was merciless. The names carved on the monument would disappear. After they disappeared, someone else would carve their name. After 10,000 years, no matter how high you carve your name, who would remember you without a name? Even if you became a sovereign martial emperor, how many people would seriously look at your dim light before the rows of dazzling golden words? Before everyone's incredulous gazes, Xiao Qin stood before the Sage Mark Monument and carved his name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument. Xiao Qin carved every stroke very seriously. He was Xiao Qin, not the Thunder King or the Qing Emperor. You want to fight for this moment, but I will fight with you forever. Let's see whose light will be more dazzling after 10,000 years. Let's see who will remember whose name after 1,000 cycles of reincarnation. One monument, one Kunlun realm. How many sages had there been since ancient times? Who would take the initiative to carve their name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument? That was a corner that even cultivators who advanced to martial sage before 100 years old would scoff at. The cultivators present were flabbergasted. The densely packed crowds on the surrounding mountains were also flabbergasted. Some people did not understand. Some people smiled coldly in their hearts, thinking that Xiao Qin knew that he was no match for Xiao Qin and was just putting on a show. Some people entered deep thought, carefully pondering the meaning of Xiao Qin's words. It seemed like they understood something, but at the same time they did not. Among the crowd, the first senior sister, Shui Lingling, smiled faintly. Her soft and pretty face was indescribably beautiful. She said, "Junior brother Xiao Qin looks like you really understand people. As long as one becomes a sovereign martial emperor, one's name will never disappear. The stronger one is, the brighter one's light will shine. It does not matter where it is." Under the black cloak, Ying Qiong was stunned by Xiao Qin's startling actions for a while. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "This can be considered his style. There is indeed no point in fighting for a moment's glory." The white-haired divine daughter, Tianyu Shi, shifted her gaze away from a blurry spot at the top of the Sage Mark Monument and looked at Xiao Qin, who had left his name below. Then she revealed a contemplative expression. Naturally, Di Wuk's expression was the most interesting. As he looked at Xiao Qin, who had left his name below, his expression froze. Why did Xiao Qin leave his name below? In that case, all his preparations would have been for nothing. Originally, as long as Xiao Qin dared to leave his name above, Di Wuk was confident of immediately using his secret mental energy technique to make Xiao Qin fall from the sky the instant he carved his name. The other deity races might fear the will of thunder, but Xiao Qin did not. The cultivation technique he cultivated was the supreme deity canon of the sect, the most ancient cultivation technique of the deity race. If Xiao Qin carved his name below, naturally, Xiao Qin's preparations would be wasted. Xiao Qin's plan to make Xiao Qin lose his chance to enter the Sage Mark Monument in a sorry state would also be foiled. In Xiao Qin's heart, Xiao Qin had always been a great threat. Right now, even if Xiao Qin advanced to martial sage, he still did not feel strong enough. If Xiao Qin really met Xiao Qin, he would be able to defeat Xiao Qin after putting in some effort. What Xiao Qin feared was Xiao Qin's potential and Xiao Qin's growth speed. If Xiao Qin really grew into a second Qing emperor one day, then the deity race's plan to unify the Kunlun realm would have to be shelved. If Xiao Qin's plan succeeded, Xiao Qin would deal a heavy blow to Xiao Qin when he was at his most confident. Xiao Qin would trample on Xiao Qin in front of everyone. This would definitely leave a huge shadow in Xiao Qin's heart. In the future, his cultivation would definitely be hindered. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen's nature made this plan go up in smoke. Xiao Chen did not know how long he would have to wait for a similar plan. Xiao Chen, I really overestimated you. Your courage is only SOO. I am as famous as your great-grandfather. All the outstanding talents in the world are suppressed by me. You are at the bottom. What qualifications do you have to compete with me? As a grandson, you are looking down on your great-grandfather too much. Di Wuk recovered his wits and smiled faintly. Then he started mocking Xiao Chen. His words implied that Xiao Chen was a grandson. The expressions of many people changed. They could not tell that this Di Wuk had such a venomous mouth. Just because he was on par with the Qing Emperor, he mocked Xiao Chen like that. However, the deity race cultivators laughed loudly and started jeering. Even as a grandson, he has so many titles. What white-robed bladesman? What nonsense descendant of the Qing Emperor? He is merely SO, just putting on airs and deliberately mystifying things. If you are truly capable, then surpass our divine son now. Otherwise, you are a grandson. Xiao Chen's lips curled up slightly. He raised his head and looked at Di Wuk. He smiled and said, Di Wuk, I really overestimated you. Even though you are stronger than me now, it is only a matter of time before I surpass you. Xiao Chen gently pushed off the ground and soared into the air like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a height of 2 kilometers without any pressure. Xiao Chen rose at a startling speed. 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters. Before Di Wuk could react, Xiao Chen brushed past him, surpassing the height of 3 kilometers. There were 2 kinds of pressure from the Sage Mark Monument. One was a formless pressure on a cultivator's mental energy, and the other was a visible pressure on the physical body. After observing for a long time, Xiao Chen had figured out the mysteries of the Sage Mark Monument long ago. His mental energy cultivation was second only to Di Wuk, and his physical body was second only to the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kue Do. However, of all the people present, he was the only one who could merge the two perfectly. Since ancient times, only an inferior grade martial sage had managed to achieve the same level of mental energy and physical body cultivation as Xiao Chen at the same time. Due to the limitations of his physical body, Di Wuk could not cross the 3-kilometer mark. However, Xiao Chen did not have that many restrictions. Whoosh! Xiao Chen clenched his teeth and charged over the final 300 meters of the Sage Mark Monument. Then he landed firmly on the top of the Sage Mark Monument. When Xiao Chen looked down, the deity race cultivators who mocked Xiao Chen were all dumbfounded and immediately shut their mouths. Earlier, they called Xiao Chen a grandson because Di Wuk stood taller than Xiao Chen. However, now Xiao Chen was 300 meters taller than Di Wuk. According to their logic, it was clear who was the grandson here. When the cultivators on the surrounding peaks saw Xiao Chen standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, they all went into an uproar. Their eyes filled with disbelief. What the hell is going on? Did the pressure in the Sage Mark Monument lose its effect? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Don't tell me this is real. Xiao Chen is actually standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. The martial monarchs and older generation sages on the peaks, watching the excitement, could no longer sit still. They all flew over, wanting to see what was going on. Di Wuk's expression changed unpredictably. Earlier, he had used his height to mock Xiao Chen for being a grandson. Unexpectedly, retribution paid. Xiao Chen immediately stood at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, slapping his own face. Now, he did not even have the chance to take back his words. Xiao Chen took out a bottle of wine from the universe ring and sat at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. Then he looked down at Di Wuk. Xiao Chen poured himself a cup of wine and smiled faintly. Di Wuk, below me are the sages and sages of the ancient era. Your ancestor's grandfather is among them. You want to go even lower? Are you not even qualified to be a grandson? When it came to having a vicious mouth, Xiao Chen would not lose to anyone. Since the other party had spoken, there was no need for Xiao Chen to stand on ceremony. Chapter 832. The matters of the world were always unpredictable. Di Wuk, who was feeling very pleased with himself earlier, had mocked Xiao Chen for being a grandson. Xiao Chen was immediately slapped in the face by his own words, not even qualified to be a grandson. The group of people below could not help smiling bitterly. This Di Wuk was really unlucky. After today, this matter of him being a grandson would probably spread throughout the entire Kunlun realm. The Divine Son's illustrious reputation was destined to leave a stain that could never be washed away. Di Wuk, let me offer you a toast on behalf of your ancestors' grandfather. Xiao Chen gently poured the wine flask downwards. The clear and fragrant wine immediately flowed down in a straight line. Di Wuk, who was originally so angry that he could not speak, flew into a complete rage. These words sounded like, "Come, grandson, let me offer you a toast on behalf of your grandfather." Di Wuk's figure flashed as he shouted. His white hair, which had already lost its color, turned golden again as he charged upwards. Xiao Chen's mental energy could withstand this pressure. However, his physical body could not. After barely advancing 10 meters, he felt like his bones were about to fall apart. This was the opportunity that Xiao Chen had been waiting for. His gaze turned cold as he casually tossed aside the wine flask in his hand. Then he soared into the air and kicked Di Wuk's shoulder. This kick made use of the advantage of the sage Mark Monument's descent. It was extremely fast. Di Wuk, who was struggling to climb up, was caught off guard and struck. Bang! Di Wuk was ruthlessly kicked down. His body somersaulted several times in the air. He felt like the bones in his shoulder had shattered. After this matter, Xiao Chen would definitely become a thorn in Di Wuk's side. The enmity between the two had already been established. Since he could create an opportunity to deal a blow to Di Wuk, naturally, Xiao Chen would not miss it. After kicking Di Wuk, Xiao Chen's figure flashed. He withstood the pressure and stood at the top of the Sage Mark Monument once again. The surrounding group of people were all stunned. Di Wuk, who had dominated the younger generation of Kunlun, was actually kicked to the ground by someone. This unimaginable thing actually happened in front of everyone's eyes. Looking at Di Wuk, who was in the air, Xiao Chen felt that it was a pity. His kick just now had been very satisfying, but he had not been able to put much force into it. Thus, he had not been able to truly injure Di Wuk. Di Wuk took a step in the air, and for the first time, an unsuppressible killing intent gushed out from his eyes. A terrifying aura spread out from his body, and everyone below felt a chill down their spines. Sort of initial split-moment awareness. With a soft shout, Di Wuk suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed a finger. A speck of light emerged from his fingertip, and the world seemed to turn dark. The entire world seemed to only have that speck of light. Suddenly, a strand of sword qi shot out from the tip of his finger. This strand of sword qi pierced through all the darkness in the world. The sword qi pierced through the darkness and light like the first light of the world. In an instant, it shot toward Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen felt danger for some reason. He tilted his body slightly, and a weak strand of sword qi brushed past his face, cutting off a few strands of his hair. Although this sword was very mighty and fast, and the state it contained was vast and majestic, when it arrived before Xiao Chen, its might was negligible under the pressure of the Sage Mark Monument. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Then he looked coldly at the other party. The Kunlun realm was destined to have only one main character. Today, Xiao Chen and Di Wuk shed all pretense of cordiality. Xiao Chen's opponent was very strong. Even if he used his full power, he might not be able to defeat him. However, there was still a long way to go. The one who laughed last would be the one whose light would never fade. Beams of light started flickering on the Sage Mark monument. The many cultivators who were watching the excitement all turned grave. This was a sign that the world in the Sage Mark monument was about to open. Some of the inferior grade martial sages who had not imprinted their names quickly stepped forward and imprinted their names. Di Wuk withdrew the murderous intent in his eyes and glanced at Xiao Chen, who was at the top of the Sage Mark monument. Then he calmly landed among the deity race cultivators. When a deity race cultivator saw Di Wuk's sullen expression, he stepped forward and tried to curry favor with him. "Divine Son, don't lower yourself to the same level as this fellow. This fellow is just a grandson. How can he compare to you?" Di Wuk's previously calm expression suddenly erupted. He sent this person flying with a palm strike and said, "Scram! Don't mention the word grandson in front of me." When the 13 Keepers of Light saw that person get sent flying, they revealed speechless expressions. This fellow really deserved it. He touched a sore spot. Even a fool could tell that Di Wuk was now allergic to this word. The Sage Mark monument was about to open. There were secret treasures, cultivation techniques, natural treasures, and all sorts of spirit veins waiting to be excavated by the inferior grade martial sages. This fortuitous encounter was hard to come by. The cultivators of the various races and the demonic geniuses of the younger generation all raised their heads in anticipation. As Xiao Chen sat at the top of the Sage Mark monument, he saw Di Wuk's actions. Then he smiled faintly and withdrew his gaze. Xiao Chen shifted his gaze to the bottom of the Sage Mark monument and entered deep thought. According to legend, the people who left these marks mysteriously left this world. Rumor had it that they all reached the martial god realm. According to the time recorded on the Sage Mark monument, the row of golden names 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark monument represented the peak of the ancient era. In that case, these marks were even above that. Could it be that the martial epoch had an even more distant era than the ancient era? Xiao Chen looked down. At the 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark monument, he saw similar blurry marks among the rows of golden names. Xiao Chen seemed to figure something out in his mind. Then he used his finger to gently touch the mark at the bottom. Boom! A vast scene immediately appeared before Xiao Chen's eyes. A strand of saber light, sweeping through the sky, quickly chopped down at him. The face of the person who sent out the saber could not be clearly seen. The shout sounded like thunder rumbling in his sea of consciousness. Xiao Chen's body trembled, and he quickly moved his finger away. This nearly caused him to fall off the Sage Mark monument. Even if I am able to fly this high, I'm afraid that it will be difficult for me to leave my name on it. Xiao Chen thought to himself, that strand of saber light earlier was not sent out by the person who left the marks. Instead, it was made by the mysterious energy within the monument. Leaving one's name at the highest point was probably not something a martial sage could do. At the very least, no one here could block that formless saber light. Anyone who could leave a mark here was definitely not an inferior grade martial sage. However, the rules of the Sage Mark monument clearly limited one to inferior grade martial sage. Even if Emperor Wu came, he would not be able to get close to the Sage Mark monument. Could it be that the rules of the Sage Mark monument were different from the ancient era? The flickering light became increasingly dazzling. The people who left their names on the monument could already feel the energy from the monument gently pulling at them. Just as the monument was about to open, a group of unwelcome guests suddenly flew over from the middle of the mountain. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Based on their auras, they did not belong to any of the 5 races. When someone saw their eyes and recognized their clothes, he was slightly stunned. Then he said, "The merfolk of the chaotic, demonic sea. Why are they here?" The Kunlun realm was very vast. Just the continent alone was hard to traverse. The boundless ocean was even more vast and boundless. Naturally, the Tianwu domain's people were more familiar with the chaotic, demonic sea, which bordered the yellow-soiled demonic garden to the west. The merfolk were the overlords of the chaotic, demonic sea. After the chaotic, demonic sea, there was an even vaster oceanic world. There were also intelligent races like the merfolk. There were even a few extremely strong races. During the ancient era, it was said that Neptune unified the sea race. All the sea race obeyed the orders of the Neptune Palace. However, the Neptune Palace was destroyed long ago, and the sea race was very rare. The oceanic world of today had changed long ago. 2 males and 1 female. From their appearance, they didn't look much different from humans, except that their eyes were all a beautiful, deep blue color. Xiao Chun paid special attention to their feet. It was said that the merfolk were born without feet. They had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. Only when their strength reached a certain level could they freely take human form. When the 3 saw the flickering light on the Sage Mark Monument, they quickly flew forward to leave their names. They left their names at a height of 2,800 meters. Before Xiao Qin could figure out why these 3 merfolk were here, the Sage Mark Monument suction forcefully pulled the people who had left their names. 10 days later, the cultivators that entered would automatically be sent out, and the Sage Mark Monument would close. The next time it would open would be 10 years later. When Xiao Qin opened his eyes, the scene of the Kunlun mountain range had already disappeared. In its place was a somewhat desolate grassland. There was no one else in the surroundings. The thousands of people here were probably sent to different places. Xiao Chen raised his head and looked to the limits of his vision. In the very center of this world, there was a pillar of light connecting the sky and the ground, attracting Xiao Chen's gaze. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring, explained that Pillar of Light is the treasury hall in the Sage Mark Monument. However, it will not be easy to walk over. The name Treasury Hall was easy to understand. Xiao Qin asked, the treasures in there should not be taken away for nothing, right? Yes. Not only are there traps and secret tunnels in there, but there are also all sorts of ancient puppets. These puppets are not that easy to deal with. The combat puppets you came across in the Heaven Series training room were replicas of these ancient puppets. Xiao Chun remembered the combat puppets in the Heaven Series training room clearly. Not only did they have combat memories, but they also had considerable intelligence. They could even grasp martial techniques and states. We'll see later. I need to collect spirit vein origins. There should not be any on this grassland. Xiao Qin said after looking around. Although there were many spirit herbs in the Immortal Spirit Ring, there were only 2 that he cared about, the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. The lunar cassia tree produced lunar cassia flowers that could heal almost any injury. It was much more convenient than medicinal pills. The dragon mark fruit did not require much. It was a rare natural treasure that could directly strengthen a cultivator's vital qi. By using the spirit vein's origin to nurture it, it could increase its age significantly. If it could reach 1,000 years, even with Xiao Chen's current cultivation, he would gain great benefits. Ao Jiao smiled and said, that is hard to say. You cannot use the logic of the outside world to judge this small world. The spirit veins in the outside world are all under the mountains. However, the spirit veins here might be under your feet. Chapter 833. Xiao Qin closed his eyes and extended his spiritual sense to its maximum detection range of 10,000 meters. Then he scanned the area a few times in a circle, but did not discover anything. Without a special sealing technique, one should be able to discover a spirit vein's origin easily from a distance. Don't search like that. The spirit vein's origin is hidden in a special layer of stone. No spiritual energy fluctuations will leak out. Departed spirit flowers will grow above the ground where the spirit vein's origin is hidden. If you find the departed spirit flowers, you will most likely find the spirit vein. Ao Jiao explained in detail to Xiao Chin how to find the spirit vein here. Departed spirit flowers contained strong death energy. They were the favorites of the ghost race and corpse race. It was not strange for departed spirit flowers to grow in a place devoid of spiritual energy. Just as Xiao Qin thought this, a purple, red, and blue light suddenly soared up from an extremely distant place in the vast savanna. Auspicious signs descended from the sky. Xiao Qin frowned slightly. This was the sign of a spirit vein. Someone discovered the spirit vein so quickly. A tricolored light signified a rank 3 spirit vein. If a rank 3 spirit vein was suppressed in a mountain range, one could mine it for medial grade spirit stones. With this spirit vein, one could establish a sect in the Sky Dome realm. Furthermore, it would be a great sect. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Such a mysterious phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of several people. Several figures quickly flew towards the location of the spiritual light. Aside from cultivators, one could also hear horrifying beast roars. The native spirit beasts of the savannah were startled as well. The auras they gave off were all rank 9 spirit beasts that rivaled martial sages. Even Xiao Qin felt some fear from some of these auras. It looked like this desolate savannah was not as peaceful as it appeared on the surface. Electric light burst out from under Xiao Qin's feet. He turned into a beam of purple light and quickly flew over as well. After a few breaths, Xiao Qin arrived at the location of the spiritual light. The place was chaotic, with cultivators of all races present. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators fought over a black flower. The fiend race, human race, and deity race cultivators chased after the spiritual light. Sparkling and translucent light leaked out from the ball of light and scattered in the air. The scene was very beautiful. Needless to say, the black flower was naturally the departed spirit flower. The death energy contained within it could rapidly increase the strength of the cultivators of the 2 races. The ball of light was a tier 3 spirit vein origin. The human race cultivated true essence, the demon race cultivated demon essence, and the god race cultivated spiritual energy as well as true essence. No matter what the 3 races focused on, when they advanced to martial sage, they all cultivated heavenly sage laws. The vast spiritual energy contained in the spirit vein's origin could be converted into the heavenly sage laws they cultivated. Xiao Qin observed for a while. Among the martial practitioners of the 3 races fighting for the rank 3 spirit vein, there were no monstrous geniuses of the younger generation. Xiao Qin smiled faintly. Now that he had obtained this rank 3 spirit vein's origin, he should not need to spend too much effort on it. If one was not a demonic genius of the younger generation, the other inferior grade martial sages would find it hard to contend against him. Bang! 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 Suddenly, something strange happened. A figure charged over and sent out berserk water tornadoes. The cultivators struck by the water tornadoes all vomited blood and fell to the ground. With a wave of his hand, no one was a match for him. Even the stronger deity race cultivators were no exception. Before they could execute their mental energy martial techniques, the berserk water tornadoes severely injured them and knocked them to the ground. The force contained in the water tornadoes seemed to be able to pierce through space. They gave off a loud, ear-splitting sound. Not bad. A rank 3 spirit vein's origin is considered a rare item in the chaotic, demonic sea. The person who arrived laughed loudly and stretched out his hand to grab the rank 3 spirit vein's ball of light. All this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly. When Xiao Qin saw the other party's deep blue eyes, his expression turned grave. Unexpectedly, the person who arrived was one of the 3 merfolk race cultivators. This person looked delicate and pretty. From a glance, he looked to be no older than 25 years old. He was wearing a close-fitting leather armor with patterns that Xiao Qin could not understand. The lines of the patterns had a faint glow, so it should not be some ordinary clothing. This person's strong strength shocked the cultivators of the three races. When they landed on the ground and saw the other party holding the spirit vein's origin, they did not dare to do anything. The young merfolk race cultivator carefully put away the spirit vein's origin. Then he looked at the cultivators below, who did not dare to say anything. He smiled gently and prepared to leave. However, the moment the merfolk race cultivator turned around, he saw a white figure appear at some point, looking at him calmly. The merfolk race cultivator was startled. When did this person appear? Why did I not sense him at all? Hand over the spirit vein's origin, and I will let you go, Xiaoqin said indifferently, directly stating his purpose. The merfolk race cultivator's lips curled up. He smiled and said, I'll give it to you. I, Mu Yin, will not give it to you for free. Stop dreaming. The merfolk race cultivator's temper was rather explosive. Before Xiaoqin could say anything, he sent out a water spout. The water spun wildly, looking like a pillar of light as it shot toward Xiaoqin. Rumble. The sound of surging water rang out endlessly. The approaching waterspout was incredibly berserk, looking like it could easily pierce through a mountain. The originally gentle water seemed so berserk in this person's hands, even more ferocious than fire or hail. Ka! A saber light flashed, and thunder roared in the sky. The berserk waterspout split in half and brushed past Xiaoqin, not injuring him at all. The cold saber light flickered with sparks. Xiaoqin held the lunar shadow saber with one hand and pointed it at the other party. Seeing his opponent break his waterspout with a casual saber strike, a strange look flashed in Mu Yan's eyes. However, he was not frightened. Not bad. You have some strength. However, you are too naive if you want to block my way with this little strength. Falling rain like sabers. Mu Yun shouted and formed hand seals with one hand. Then he pointed to the sky. Dark clouds churned, and after a while, heavy rain fell. The rainwater formed a line, each line like a saber. High in the sky, a bird attracted by the spiritual light accidentally flew through it. The bird cried out miserably, and thousands of tiny bloody holes appeared all over its body. It died instantly, unable to resist at all. Falling rain like sabers formed a line. The rainwater falling from the sky was even sharper than a saber. Mu Yan's lips curled up in a smile. This falling rain like sabers had killed many martial sages in the chaotic, demonic sea. It covered a large area and lasted for a long time. Once one fell into it, they would not be able to escape the fate of being pierced through. A vast sea appeared behind Xiaoqin. 99 pillars of water soared into the sky. A blue dragon leaped out of the sea, and a 3-kilometer-long dragon-shaped saber chi gathered on the saber. Before Mu Yan's smile could freeze, he saw Xiaoqin chopping down with a saber. The dark clouds in the sky were split in half. Sunlight shone down, and the torrential rain vanished. With this move forcefully broken, Mu Yan's chi and blood surged, and his heavenly sage laws turned chaotic. He quickly suppressed them. Whoosh! An electric light flashed, and Xiaoqin descended from the sky. He moved as fast as the wind, but his saber was even faster than the wind. Mu Yan's figure wavered, and the afterimage he left behind was chopped in half. He stretched out his hand, and a saber appeared in his grasp. Then he swung his saber horizontally and blocked Xiaoqin's next attack. Sparks flew everywhere as Xiaoqin quickly changed his move. The saber light split into 81 saber images. Each saber image contained his will of thunder. Dang! 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 Mu Yin felt his arm sink slightly as he blocked the 81 saber strikes. With every block, he moved back significantly. By the time he blocked the final saber strike, he had already moved back 3 kilometers. Mu Yin could tell that this move was extraordinary. The heavenly sage laws in his body surged, and a vast sea appeared behind him. As the saber flew over his head, it surged forward like a tsunami. Boom! The sea of lightning and the vast tsunami collided with each other, causing violent ripples in the void. Waves of earth-shattering sounds rang out continuously. Blood leaked out of a corner of Mu Yun's lips as he retreated a kilometer. Before he could stabilize himself, he suddenly felt an extremely dangerous killing qi. However, when he looked carefully, he could not find any traces of it. Just as Mu Yun panicked, a pretty figure flashed by him. She moved her 10 fingers, and a gentle screen of water formed in front of her. The instant the screen of water formed, a beam of rainbow light flickered like a meteor and crashed into it. Ripples spread out from the gentle screen of water, slowly dissipating the energy contained in the beam of rainbow light. The ripples moved faster and faster. Finally, there was a loud bang. Unexpectedly, the screen of water could not withstand this energy, and it turned into a spray of water that scattered into the air. However, after blocking for a while, the might of that beam of rainbow light was completely blocked. Xiao Chen did not get greedy. He sheathed his saber and retreated. His movements were very clean and decisive as he watched the newcomer quietly. The newcomer was a girl. She also wore aqua blue leather. Most of her skin was exposed, and she had a pair of pretty sky blue eyes. When Mu Yun saw the screen of water shatter, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Unexpectedly, even the princess's azure sky water curtain could not block the earlier saber strike. If the princess had not come, that earlier saber strike would have killed him without a doubt. However, this place was special. Even if he died, his death would only be transmitted out. He would not truly die. Mu Yin, hand over the spirit vein's origin to this young master. I believe this is a misunderstanding, the beautiful merfolk girl said softly. Her voice was like flowing water, very pleasant to the ears. Mu Yun frowned slightly. However, he did not dare to disobey this girl. He took out the spirit vein's origin and tossed it to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand to catch it. Then he casually tossed it into the immortal spirit ring. After glancing at this girl, Xiao Chen did not say anything. He stood on a lightning dragon and vanished into the sky. Seeing Xiao Chen's indifferent attitude, Mu Yun could not help feeling even more upset. He said, "This fellow is too arrogant." He left without saying anything. It's like I snatched his spirit vein's origin. The merfolk girl withdrew her gaze and said softly, "This person is not simple. The Sage Mark Monument is famous in the chaotic demonic sea, even the entire oceanic world. However, this person was at the top of the Sage Mark Monument earlier. In the past 10,000 years, I have never heard of anyone doing this." Feeling dissatisfied, Mu Yin said, "However, no matter what, he is just an inferior grade martial sage. I don't believe that Princess Yao Yen and I are not a match for him even if we work together." Chapter 834. It's just a rank 3 spiritual vein. There's no need to become enemies with this person. Don't forget our purpose for coming here. The crisis of the merfolk tribe rests entirely on the 3 of us. Hearing the woman's words, Mu Yun's expression slowly turned grim. Princess Yao Yin glanced in the direction that Xiao Chen had left and said, "Let's go. Let's find your big brother first. Then we'll go to the treasury hall. We must obtain the extreme thunder sword." Hee, what a dense spiritual energy. Now that the lunar cassia tree has matured, we can save 10 years of time. Xiao Chen, keep up the good work and find a few more spirit veins. Just a few supreme grade spirit veins will do. Inside the immortal spirit ring, Ao Jiao said excitedly as she controlled the formation in the ring to insert the spirit vein. Hearing that it could only save 10 years, Xiao Chen was disappointed. He said, "A rank 3 spirit vein can only save 10 years? The lunar cassia tree takes 500 years to mature. That's a little too many spirit veins." Ao Jiao's lips curled up as she said, "You should be content with what you have. Only your immortal spirit ring is of a higher grade. If it were the immortal spirit ring of another Emperor Wu, the formations in it would not be complete. You would be thankful if you could save 5 years. However, if you can obtain a peak-grade spirit vein, you can save 100 years. If it's a holy-grade spirit vein, you can immediately ripen it. The dragon mark fruit you need the most will immediately reach 1,000 years of age. Peak spirit veins could produce superior grade spirit stones. Rank 9 sects had a limited number of superior grade spirit veins, not to mention holy spirit veins. The Supreme Sky sect seemed to have only 2. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Shao Qin looked around and continued to search for the spiritual vein. Shao Chun was clearly not as good at finding the departed flower as the corpse race and the ghost race. Everyone had their own specialties, and there was no way he could compare to the professionals. Hence, Shao Chun followed a group of ghost race cultivators searching for departed spirit flowers on this savanna. The other party cultivated the power of death and would not care about the spiritual vein origin. Shao Chun followed behind and took advantage of the situation. As for the battle between them and the corpse race, he naturally would not interfere. The battle between the two races was an eye-opener for Shao Qin. One side summoned demonic corpses that were suffused with black smoke, while the other side summoned Yin soldiers that emitted gusts of cold wind. The battle was rather brilliant, and the scene was extremely grand. As Shao Chun followed this group of ghost race cultivators, he gained a lot. The speed at which he found spirit veins excited him. In a short half a day, he had collected another 5 rank 3 spirit veins. When this group of ghost race cultivators met up with another group of people, Shao Chen sighed when he saw the 8 ghost palanquin floating in the air. He knew that this relaxed and happy situation was about to come to an end. "Young Master Shao, please wait." The woman walked out from the palanquin and called out to Shao Chen. The younger generation of the ghost race, led by Qing Cheng, had all arrived. Now they were gathering the other ghost race cultivators. Naturally, Shao Chen would not follow behind and take advantage of the situation. His earlier actions had already incurred the displeasure of the ghost race cultivators. However, they could not do anything to him, so they could only pretend not to see it. When Shao Chen heard Qing Cheng's voice, he turned around slightly. However, he did not approach blindly. 5 demonic geniuses of the younger generation and more than 100 inferior grade martial sages of the ghost race. With such a lineup, Shao Chen would not let himself be in danger. "Young Master Shao is really cautious. Would you mind speaking further? I have something to discuss with you." Qing Cheng revealed a faint smile on her snow-white face as she looked at Shao Chen, who was 2 kilometers away. Shao Chen thought for a while and looked around. Suddenly, electric light burst out from under his feet, and he instantly closed the distance of 2 kilometers. Green flames burned in the eyes of the ghost race cultivators that Shao Chen had taken advantage of. They were eager to make a move, and a sinister wind blew. When Shao Chen saw this, he smiled to himself. It looks like this group of ghost race cultivators really have a problem with me. However, Shao Chen did not do anything. He only watched them fight with the corpse race and picked up some spirit veins that they did not need. "What is it? Speak." Actually, Shao Chen had some guesses in his heart. If that was really the case, he might be able to take advantage of the situation. Qing Cheng was rather direct. She said, "If you want to collect spirit veins, we can help you find them. However, you have to agree to help us deal with the corpse race. Help us deal with the corpse race. Otherwise, if you search for it yourself, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to be efficient." The corner of Shao Chen's lips curled up. He said, "Sorry, these conditions are not enough for me to offend the corpse race." Qing Qing had expected this long ago. She had not thought of using these conditions to move Shao Chen. She continued, "If we say that we can help you find a peak spirit vein's origin, will you still say sorry?" Peak spirit veins could produce superior grade spirit stones in large quantities. In the Tianwu domain, the accumulations of a sect were measured by the number of peak spirit veins they had. Sects frequently needed superior grade spirit stones to reward their disciples. Without sufficient resources, they could not attract new disciples to join the sect. Peak spirit veins were very valuable and could not be easily measured. To Xiao Qin, if he could find a peak spirit vein, he might be able to accelerate the ripening of the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. However, when Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's words, his first reaction was not to be tempted. Instead, he considered the pros and cons spirit veins were useless to corpse race cultivators. However, they were still valuable. They could use them to exchange for other treasures. They would not give them to Xiao Qin for free. If Xiao Chen guessed right, the old enemy of the ghost race, the corpse race, should know where the peak spirit vein was. They might be able to find help. Qing Cheng definitely knew that Xiao Qin had the death throne. Working with her would be like asking a tiger for its skin. It was normal for the other party to kill the donkey after it was no longer of use, using him as a hired thug. In the time it took for a spark to fly, Xiao Chen analyzed the situation in his mind several times. After a while, he said decisively, "Very well, I promise you. I hope that you will keep your promise after this matter is over." Joy flashed in the eyes of the 4 men and women behind Qing Cheng. A group of more than 100 people started moving quickly on the vast savannah. As they traveled, Qing Cheng told Xiao Qin about the details of the situation. The last time the Sage Mark Monument opened, it was also in this savannah. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators discovered 3 departed spirit flowers that bore fruit. The departed spirit fruits borne by departed spirit flowers contain death energy. Needless to say, everyone knew that they were much stronger than departed spirit flowers. Unfortunately, these departed spirit fruits were still 1 breath away from ripening. Furthermore, there was a black flame, sovereign snake guarding them. So the 2 races had no choice but to give up. Now that 10 years had passed, those 3 departed spirit fruits were already ripe. Departed spirit flowers could bear departed spirit fruits. Furthermore, there were 3 of them. Without even thinking about it, the spirit vein hidden beneath them was definitely of a very high rank. Our strength is about the same as the corpse races. However, I heard that they are working together with the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei Do. At that time, I will have to ask young Master Xiao to take care of Kuei Do, Qing Cheng said softly, sounding extremely weak. Kuei Do had advanced to martial sage through the physical body. Xiao Qin estimated that Kuei Do's sage body had already reached rank 3, even stronger than his peak rank 2 sage body. The cultivation of the physical body was extremely arduous. Those who could advance to martial sage through the physical body not only had unparalleled talent, but their extraordinary tenacity was also the most terrifying. The pain of tempering the physical body was something that Xiao Qin experienced much more deeply than others. As Qing Qing spoke, a small team sent out to search for ordinary departed spirit flowers sounded the alarm. They must have discovered something else. The departed spirit fruits were very far away. Naturally, these ghost race cultivators would not give up on the departed spirit flowers along the way. After sending out many small teams to search, Xiao Chen found another 4 rank 3 spirit veins, origins along the way. Electric light burst out, and Xiao Qin left the speaking Qing Qing behind. Then he stood on a lightning dragon and arrived at the location of the incident after a few breaths. Qing Qing could not help but feel speechless. Can you not behave in such an unsightly manner? After all, you are someone who dared to oppose Diwok. Aren't you afraid of being mocked by others for being so anxious? Adding in this spirit vein's origin, this fellow has already collected 10 rank 3 spirit veins by following us. If we convert them into astral coins, that would be a large sum. The one who spoke was Ji Shizhan, a genius of the ghost race who was as famous as Qing Cheng. He was very strong. However, Qing Cheng's status was much higher than Ji Shizhan's, so he was not as famous as Ji Shizhan. That's right. 10 spirit veins origins are already worth a peak sage grade secret treasure. To think that this fellow can take them with a clear conscience, not feeling any guilt at all. The other ghost race woman, Bai Su, curled her lips and said in an extremely upset manner. Qing Cheng's eyes remained as calm as still water. She said, "There are not many people who can deal with Kuei-do. He is one of them. Let him be for now. We can talk about everything else after we obtain the departed spirit fruits." When Xiao Chun rushed over, the ghost race cultivators had summoned Yin soldiers and were currently fighting with a group of corpse race cultivators. A cold wind howled. The Yin soldiers, which seemed both real and fake, looked extremely frightening. Yin soldiers were undying puppets that the ghost race refined from the souls of the dead using special methods. Like the demonic corpses of the corpse race, they were infamous in the Kunlun realm. When the ghost race and corpse race cultivators saw Xiao Chun arrive, their expressions immediately turned unsightly. Xiao Chun smiled faintly and arrived before the departed spirit flower in a flash. Then he plucked the departed spirit flower and punched the ground. Boom! Xiao Chen's energy spread out, and the spirit veins' origins hidden underground were affected. They struggled free with a bang. A tricolored spiritual light broke through the ground, filling the sky with auspicious signs. Xiao Chen raised his head and looked around. Soon, his gaze fixed on a flickering spirit vein's origin. He stretched out his hand, and a suction pulled it over. After tossing it into the universe ring, Xiao Qin stood on a flickering electric light and vanished. The ghost race cultivators did not find this strange. They let go of the corpse race cultivators and continued searching for departed spirit flowers along the way. After returning to the group, Xiao Chun handed the departed spirit flower to Qing Cheng. Then he smiled apologetically and said, where were we? Please continue." Ji Shizhan and the others could not be bothered to retort. Out of sight, out of mind, they directly soared into the air, leaving only Qing Cheng to negotiate with Xiao Qin. "We were talking about having you deal with Kuei-do. At the very least, you have to help us delay him," Qing Cheng said patiently. Xiao Qin smiled and said, "That's easy." Before Xiao Chen could finish speaking, the alarm unique to the ghost race rang out in another direction. It was another group that had found another departed spirit flower and clashed with the corpse race. Chapter 835. Electric light flashed, and a gentle breeze blew, picking up the withered leaves. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Qin vanished from Qing Cheng's sight. Qing Cheng showed some anger on her face, but she hid it well and continued leading the group forward. By the time the sun set the next day, Xiao Qin had collected 35 rank 3 spirit veins, a horrifying number. Even the Haotian sect could take out only 200 or 300 rank 3 spirit veins, not to mention their 10,000 years of accumulation. The lunar cassia tree that Ao Jiao infused with her full power in the immortal spirit ring had already reached a height of more than 100 meters. Its branches and leaves were lush, and lush greenery filled the air. As for the dragon mark fruits that Xiao Qin valued, they were growing even better. There were now 6 of them, and each of them had a golden bright fruit hanging on them. The effects of the 30-odd high-ranked spirit veins had not gone to waste. Ao Jiao giggled and said, "Do your best. Do your best. These ghost race cultivators are really good people. A team of more than 100 people helping you search for spirit veins for free. This is a rare opportunity." An irritable aura spread through the ghost race group. Qing Cheng wondered if she had found the wrong person. They watched as their group fought to the death with the corpse race. Yet this fellow managed to obtain the spirit veins' origin so easily. Sometimes, when Xiao Qin was lucky, he could pick a departed spirit flower. However, if the corpse race managed to obtain the departed spirit flower first, he would not waste his energy to help them snatch it. Qing Cheng wanted Xiao Qin to help, but when she looked back, she discovered that he had already disappeared. She could not do anything about it. In the following 2 days, not only the ghost race but also the corpse race raised their guard against Xiaoqin. When the two sides saw him appear, they tacitly stopped fighting at the same time and started fighting for the departed spirit flowers and spirit veins' origins. Furthermore, most of the spirit veins in the savannah had already been searched. Xiaoqian's harvest decreased sharply. After 2 days, he managed to obtain 5 spirit veins' origins. However, 40 spirit veins' origins were sufficient. Within 4 days, the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit in the immortal spirit ring reached 400 years of age. Xiaoqin estimated that the moon cassia tree would be completely mature in 2 days. At that time, he could either keep it for himself or sell it for star coins. Of course, the prerequisite for all of this was that they would be able to obtain that supreme grade spirit vein. Otherwise, they would have to wait another 100 years. Or he could spend a large amount of money to buy a rank 3 spirit vein from the black market. That would not be worth it. The advancing team suddenly stopped. Xiaoqin also frowned slightly. Just a moment ago, the death qi that filled the void suddenly increased by a lot. Life and death, the withering of flowers and grass, the extinction of birds and beasts, or the death of cultivators, the death qi of the world always existed. However, it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to sense it. If they accidentally sensed it, they would avoid it. No one liked death qi. Xiaoqin was no exception. However, the group of ghost race cultivators behind all looked radiant. Their eyes gleamed with vigor, clearly enjoying themselves. Xiaoqin focused on the vast savannah at the limits of his vision. He could see 2 strands of black smoke soaring into the sky, forming a black cloud in the clear sky. Unexpectedly, the formless death qi was visible to the naked eye. Needless to say, the departed spirit fruit was below the black cloud. In another direction, the many corpse race cultivators all stopped as well. As they looked at the black cloud, greed appeared in their eyes. 5 men stood at the front of the group. The one in the middle was the mysterious man with the departed spirit mark on his forehead that Xiaoqin had paid special attention to. Beside him was Wang Can, who had fought with Xiaoqin before. The other 3 were the outstanding talents of the corpse race's younger generation. Brother Wei Hua, that place is where the departed spirit fruit is. However, there are only 2 strands of death qi. The black flame, sovereign snake, guarding this place, should have eaten one. Wang Can said politely as he pointed to the front. Wei Hua nodded and said in a somewhat hoarse voice, "I can feel it. I only need 1 departed spirit fruit. That will be sufficient for me to advance to late-stage, inferior, grade martial sage." The ghost race people, a murderous intent flashed in Wei Hua's eyes. He said, "There's no need to worry. This time I brought 3 underworld fire demonic corpses. Each of them can hold their own against a medial grade martial sage. There is no need to fear even if we run into D. Wuk." Bang! Intense explosions resounded in the air. Wang Can looked up and saw a figure moving quickly in the air. Xiaoqin could not feel any fluctuations of death energy or heavenly sage laws. When that person stomped on the air, there was an intense explosion that sounded like thunder. Relying entirely on the control of his physical body, he stepped on the void and arrived at an extraordinary speed. Wang Can's face lit up in joy. He smiled and said, "Kuei Do is here. Now we are even more confident." Wei Hua raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "The physical body of the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant is indeed as strong as before." However, Wei Hua's tone did not sound friendly. Wang Can knew the secret behind this. Wei Hua's great-grandfather was a true major character of the Corpse God Palace, one of the 4 sovereign martial emperors, the Underworld Fire Sovereign. Back then, when the Iron Hand Sovereign betrayed the Corpse God Palace, he fought with Wei Hua's great-grandfather. In the end, the Underworld Fire Sovereign lost, allowing the Iron Hand Sovereign to flee. The old grudges of adulthood had long since faded away with the passage of time. There was no eternal hatred between sovereign martial emperors. However, when two descendants met, a small grudge would definitely exist. Whoosh! The Iron Hand sovereign's figure flashed, and he landed in front of Wei Hua. He smiled and said, "The two of you have been waiting for a long time. I ran into Yan Shi-san along the way and spent some effort to shake him off." Wei Hua smiled gently and said, "Yan Shi-san's killing sword Dao extinguishes all life force, killing everything in the world. You focus on cultivating the physical body. It is normal that you cannot defeat him." The Iron Hand sovereign's expression changed as he stared at Wei Hua. Then he smiled and said, "I was wondering who it was. So, it is the underworld fire sovereign's descendant. The scar on your great-grandfather's chest should still be there, right? The full power strike of a rank 7 sage body left a mark that will not fade even after 10,000 years." The two started mocking each other the moment they met. Wang Can quickly stepped forward and laughed loudly. "Brother Kuei-do, let's go quickly. After this matter is over, I guarantee that I will give you my heavenly demon body cultivation art." Kuei-do snorted coldly and did not say anything more. Wei Hua also knew when to advance and when to retreat. This was not the time to seek trouble for the other party, so he did not continue mocking the other party. The two groups headed for the place where the black smoke rose, flying quickly over the savannah. For hours later, the two groups arrived almost at the same time. However, they did not start fighting immediately. Instead, they showed grave expressions. When the two groups arrived below the black clouds, they did not see the departed spirit flower. There was only a black snake coiled around its body, looking like a small hill. A faint flame burned on its black scales. A pair of small horns protruded from its head, and it flicked its scarlet tongue as it looked around. This was the black flame sovereign snake. However, its size surpassed everyone's expectations. There was also the small horn on its head. All of these indicated that the black flame sovereign snake's strength had improved in the past 10 years. Qing Cheng stared at the black flame sovereign snake and said, "This is problematic. It swallowed a departed spirit fruit. It is probably as strong as a superior grade martial sage now." Wang Can and the others frowned heavily as well. They did not know what to do. Earlier, they had not treated the black flame sovereign snake as much trouble. As the two groups soared into the air, they could see the anxiety in each other's eyes. This was not the result that Xiao Qin wanted. Xiao Qin entered deep thought. After a while, he said, "The departed spirit fruit should be under it. I'll lure it away." Ji Shizhan by Su and the others looked at Xiao Qin in shock. It was not that they did not believe in Xiao Qin's strength. However, it was rare for Xiao Qin to take the initiative to help. "Don't worry. I'm still confident in my speed. After I return, I will help you delay Kuei-do." Xiao Qin continued, dispelling the doubts in Qing Cheng's heart. She nodded and said, "Dragging things out like this is not a solution. In that case, I'll have to trouble young Master Xiao. However, are you confident of escaping?" The interests of the two groups were now tied together. If they lost, it would be impossible for Xiao Qin to obtain the peak spirit vein. "I never do things that I am not confident of." Xiao Qin pushed off the air, and his figure flickered. Then a bow appeared in his hand. Xiao Qin drew the bowstring, and an arrow fell like a meteor, tearing space apart. With a Kasi-ai sound, the arrow accurately struck the gap between the black flame sovereign snake scales and entered its body. Just one arrow was already so powerful. Qing Cheng, Wang Can, and the others were all astonished. Since when did the black flame sovereign snake's defense become like tofu? There is a secret to this bow. The few of them stared at the Soul Slayer bow in Xiao Chen's hand. Their eyes revealed an extremely interested expression. This was especially so for Kuei-do. He watched very carefully. When Xiao Qin drew the bowstring, he used pure vital qi. Blood flowed out, and the black flame sovereign snake howled in pain. Then it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of flames at Xiaoqin. The dense black flames were like dense clouds. Everywhere it passed, it burned up the air and dust, leaving behind large patches of pitch-black space. Xiaoqin nimbly dodged. Then he drew the bowstring again and fired another arrow. The black flame sovereign snake was thoroughly enraged. Its huge body soared into the air and shot toward Xiaoqin. When the black flame sovereign snake's body left the ground, 3 departed spirit flowers appeared before the 2 teams. 2 of the flowers contained a black fruit. Attack! The 2 teams withdrew their attention from the Soul Slayer bow in Xiaoqin's hand. They did not waste any words and immediately started fighting. Along the way, the teams that the 2 sides sent out to search for departed spirit flowers had fought several times. Both sides had been preparing for this fierce battle for a long time. Far away, Xiaoqin, who was dodging the black flame sovereign snake's attacks, revealed a faint smile. This was the situation that he wanted to see. The black flames surged endlessly. Occasionally, large patches of pitch-black space appeared in the sky. Xiaoqin frowned, not daring to dodge. The might of these flames was ferocious. Furthermore, they contained a deathly energy that could burn away life force. Suddenly, there was the sound of a swift wind. The wind was like a saber, piercing through the surface of Xiaoqin's protective quintessence and causing his face to hurt. Chapter 836. Xiaoqin pushed off with his feet and spun around as he soared into the air. The moment he rose, a black snake tail swept under his feet. If he had been any slower, he would have suffered this strike. The snake tail sweep was the strongest move of snake-type spirit beasts. This sweep of the black flame sovereign snake, which was as strong as a superior grade martial sage, was sufficient to severely injure Xiaoqin. The howling of a strong wind resounded in the sky. It sounded like a hurried whistle, spreading in all directions and scattering the white clouds. With one sweep, there were no clouds for 5 kilometers around. Xiaoqin was flabbergasted. No wonder the expressions of the people on both sides immediately changed when they saw the gigantified black flame sovereign snake. With such explosive power, it would be terrible if one got hit. A strong fishy smell wafted over. Xiaoqin looked up and saw the black flame sovereign snake twisting its body in the air like a flood dragon. Then it opened its huge mouth and launched itself at him. A huge suction force came from its mouth, and a whirlwind continued to form, spinning continuously. Fortunately, Xiaoqin dodged quickly and was not pulled by the suction. He tilted his body down and glided down like an eagle. Then he turned his head back and fired another arrow. The black flame sovereign snake's mind was filled with rage. It roared and spat out a 3,000-meter-long black flame from its mouth. The snake's head danced. The pillar of flames danced in the air, looking very mighty. As Xiaoqin glided down, he moved about nimbly, dodging the flames, not letting any sparks come into contact with him. As the chase continued, the spirit beasts and cultivators of the savannah panicked and fled for their lives. The difference between a superior grade martial sage and an inferior grade martial sage was an insurmountable chasm. Xiaoqin was not arrogant enough to kill the other party. However, he was very confident of luring this black flame sovereign snake away. Xiaoqin looked up into the distance and saw a pillar of light descending from the sky. That was the target of everyone here, the treasury hall. After dodging a few times, Xiaoqin slid swiftly towards the ground. When he was close to the ground, he lifted his body slightly and landed firmly on the ground. Xiaoqin took a few steps forward, alleviating the momentum from inertia. He stopped dodging and raised his head to look at the black flame sovereign snake in the air. When the black flame sovereign snake saw that Xiaoqin was no longer running for his life, it charged down violently, its huge body directly descending. 9 roaming dragon transformations. A loud rumbling sound rang out as the black flame, sovereign snake, landed on the ground. The entire ground shook violently and cracks even appeared. The black flames on his body ignited the surrounding weeds. As the flames swept out, a large patch of ash was created. 9 figures surrounded the black flame snake and soared into the air. The real and the fake were hard to distinguish. The black flame snake spat out flames and destroyed the clones one by one. By the time the black flame sovereign snake destroyed the 8 clones, it had already given Xiao Chen too much time. Xiao Chen's true body was already a kilometer away. Xiao Chen formed hand seals, and the 72 universe flags flickered with spiritual light. They quickly entered the ground and formed a strong restriction that spanned 5 kilometers. The restriction covered all directions, including the sky and the ground. Once the black flame sovereign snake was trapped, it would not be able to escape. However, to others, they would not be able to discover anything. Furthermore, the restriction had a simple illusion effect. Xiao Chen's white robes fluttered in the sharp air as he looked at the restriction below. He smiled faintly and heaved a sigh of relief. Then he dusted off his hands and carefully flew back. 5 kilometers away, Xiao Chen stopped in the air. He supported his chin with his right hand as he watched carefully. While avoiding the 2 departed spirit fruits, the ghost race and corpse race fought each other to the death. The battle was very intense. All sorts of Yin soldiers and demonic corpses fought. A cold wind blew, and black qi spread out. As dust flew up, the sounds of fighting rang out endlessly. The scene was chaotic. On the battlefield, 3 demonic corpses covered in green demonic flames attracted Xiao Chen's attention. These 3 demonic corpses were clearly different from the other demonic corpses. First, they were about 3 meters tall, far taller than the other demonic corpses. Then there was the green demonic flame on their bodies. Xiao Chen thought about it. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like the legendary Yellow Springs underworld flame. Among the inattributed flames, the Yellow Springs underworld flame was second only to the lunar true flame. It was on the same level as the Scarlet Blood Frost flame. Like the Scarlet Blood Frost flame, it was also a top-grade evil flame. Its special effect was to burn the soul, which was a strong counter to Yin soldiers. However, these 3 demonic corpses, which should have been the nemesis of Yin soldiers, met with a difficult opponent. That white figure held a long scythe in its hand. It was about 10 meters tall, much taller than the flaming demonic corpses. The white figure fought 1 against 3. Although it was clearly not a match for them, it managed to delay the 3 demonic corpses, preventing them from sweeping up the Yin soldiers elsewhere. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring, clicked her tongue and sighed. The fight is really intense. Unexpectedly, the corpse race's underworld fire demonic corpse and the ghost race's soul reaper Yin soldier are both brought over. Underworld fire demonic corpse and soul reaper Yin soldier. Xiao Chen did not understand the martial techniques of these 2 races. However, he could tell from their auras that they were not easy to deal with. This strengthened some of Xiao Chen's thoughts. He continued to watch. Qing Qing and the others all had their own opponents and could not get away. The battlefield entered a stalemate. Both sides originally thought that they could end the fight quickly. They had not expected it to be so difficult. If one observed the situation carefully, one would discover that the corpse race held the advantage. This was because the other side had an extra person, Kuei Do. Kuei Do's current opponent was a black figure holding a scythe as well. According to Ao Jiao, this was also a refined Yin soldier called Soul Reaper Yin soldier. The black robe Soul Reaper was at a complete disadvantage against Kuei Do. The energy that Kuei Do's physical body burst out with contained an aura of extreme yang, which dealt significant damage to Yin soldiers. Kuei Do's punches landed on the black figure, giving off loud bangs. The black figure was forced back, and the light on its body slowly dimmed. As long as this black-robed Soul Reaper was defeated, Kuei-do would be free to deal with the white-robed Soul Reaper. After that, Kuei-do would not need to make a move. The 3 underworld fire demonic corpses would be able to sweep through the place. With just a slight change in the balance, the other side would immediately crumble. Qing Qing, who was currently fighting with Wei Hua, had an anxious expression. Occasionally, she glanced in the direction that Xiao Qin had taken, anticipating his arrival. Yellow sand filled the air, and thick smoke churned. When Xiao Qin saw both sides fighting at full power, he sighed in his heart. This was the other side's true strength. With such a large team, no matter which side Xiao Qin faced, he would not be a match for them. If he worked with them individually, he would not be on equal footing from the start. After that, if the other side wanted to bite back, there would be no room for negotiation. Xiao Chen had never liked this kind of cooperation. He also did not believe that there would be fairness in a situation where one's strength was not equal. The initiative still needed to be in his hands. Even if it was a little risky, it was worth it. Xiao Qin took a deep look at the place where the departed spirit fruit was. Then his figure flashed, and he landed on the ground. Xiao Qin took out the puppet snake and entered its belly. Then he controlled the puppet snake to go deep underground, arriving right below the departed spirit flower without anyone noticing. Normally, a spirit vein's origin wrapped in a special stone membrane would be right below the departed spirit flower. Xiao Chun sent out his spiritual sense and searched carefully. He did not spend much time before he found the spirit vein's origin wrapped up. The puppet snake opened its mouth and bit down on the spirit vein's origin. Then it rolled into Xiao Chen's hand, easily obtaining the spirit vein's origin. The group of people above fought to the death. Even in their dreams, they would not expect that Xiao Chen, who lured away the black flame sovereign snake, had already returned. Furthermore, he managed to obtain the peak spirit vein's origin without much effort. Xiao Chen had never believed that Qing Cheng would let him leave after obtaining the spirit vein's origin. It was not just because of the spirit vein's origin. The death throne that Xiao Qin possessed was sufficient for Qing Cheng to make a move without any reason. A light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He was not in a rush to leave. Instead, he controlled the puppet snake to rise in a straight line. Up, 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 up. Bang! The 3 departed spirit flowers on the ground suddenly burst apart. Countless bits of soil flew everywhere as the 3 departed spirit flowers flew into the air. The black puppet snake opened its mouth and bit down. Then it swallowed the 3 departed spirit flowers at a speed that no one could stop. This mysterious phenomenon startled the ghost race and corpse race cultivators at the critical moment of the chaotic battle. They could not help but stop what they were doing. Damn! In the next moment, the cultivators of the 2 races reacted and started cursing angrily. Death energy gathered in their bodies, and a strong wind blew. All sorts of horrifying martial techniques rained down on the puppet snake. Do you still want the departed spirit fruits? If you want it, then stop. Xiao Chen used the dragon tone art to transmit his voice from the puppet snake. This simple sentence immediately froze everyone's movements. Before everyone's astonished gazes, Xiao Chen walked out of the puppet snake's mouth, holding 3 departed spirit flowers. As Xiao Chen looked at the stunned crowd, he smiled gently. The show was just beginning. Of the 3 departed spirit flowers, Xiao Chen picked 2 of the departed spirit fruits and played with them in his hand. Formless death qi spread out. Xiao Chen frowned slightly, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. The main reason was because of his mental state. With his protective quintessence, this death qi could not cause any substantial harm to Xiao Chen. When Qing Cheng, Ji Shizhan by Su, and the others saw Xiao Chen suddenly return, they rejoiced at first. Then their expressions changed. Something was wrong. The expressions of Wang Can Wei Hua and the others of the corpse race became uncertain as well. They did not know what Xiao Chen was trying to do. Xiao Chen, what are you trying to do? The departed spirit fruits are useless to you, right? Do you think you can run after offending both the ghost race and the corpse race for these two departed spirit fruits? Wang Can asked coldly with a sullen expression. Standing above the puppet snake, Xiaoqin smiled and said, "Ha ha! It does not matter whether it is useful to me or not. It is fine as long as it is useful to you." The ghost race woman, Qing, also showed some anger on her snow-white, soul-stirring face. She had not expected Xiaoqin to be so bold. Not only did Xiaoqin obtain the peak spirit vein's origin, but he even snatched away the departed spirit fruits before the many experts of the corpse race, ghost race, and ghost race. Chapter 837. She should have known that this fellow would not be so kind as to lure away the black flame, sovereign snake. He clearly wanted the two races to fight while he took advantage of the situation. Or rather, from the very start, Xiao Chun did not believe in Qing Cheng's promise and had made up his mind long ago. Qing Cheng said in a cold voice, "Young Master Xiao, unexpectedly, you are also someone who goes back on your word." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said to Qing Cheng, "Miss Qing Cheng, you know very well who you are keeping these black and white soul reapers to deal with. A straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. There is no need to be so pompous. I, Xiaoqin, have never said that I am a gentleman. If I really help you deal with these people, will you let me go? I am not a 3-year-old child. Whether it is right or wrong, there is no need to say too much. Right now, I am in control of everything. Whether you admit it or not, the departed spirit fruit that can help you advance quickly is now in the hands of me, Xiaoqin." There were more than 100 martial sages of the two races and countless demonic corpses and Yin soldiers. If they all attacked together, even a superior grade martial sage would not dare to be too unbridled. A gentle wind blew, and Xiao Chen's white robes and hair fluttered. As he stood on the puppet snake's head, he looked at the group of experts without any fear. His expression did not change at all. Why is he speaking so much nonsense? Attack together and take his life. Does he really think that he is incredible just because he is a descendant of the Qing Emperor? Someone roared in rage. The rest of the people chimed in. The demonic corpses roared and the Yin soldiers howled. In that instant, the winds and clouds changed, and a cloud of dust kicked up. "Who dares to take a step forward?" Xiao Qin said calmly, unhurriedly. Electricity surged in his hand as though he was going to destroy the two departed spirit fruits. "Stop! Don't move!" Wang Can and Qing Qing both berated them, stopping their subordinates. Departed spirit flowers were hard to find outside. They only existed in the underworld river, an underground forbidden land. Even Emperor Wu did not dare to enter that place. The value of the departed spirit fruit itself was already very high. The value of the fruit was even more immeasurable. Inferior grade martial sage was also the realm that could bring out the best effects of the departed spirit fruit. If they did not have a certain value, the corpse race and ghost race would not have brought out their trump cards and started fighting before reaching the treasury hall. Wei Hua, who had been silent all this while, said, "What do you want? Just say it." Xiao Chen smiled gently and said, "It seems that there are people who understand. Since all of you want this departed spirit fruit, I naturally can't give it to just anyone. You guys can bid for it. Whoever offers the most astral coins will get it. Of course, spirit vein origins, sage grade, secret treasures, secret techniques, and medicinal pills can also be added. In short, I want all treasures. I am a very open-minded person." When the cultivators of the two races heard this, their expressions changed. They wondered if they had heard wrong. This fellow, who was surrounded by more than 100 inferior grade martial sages and could die at any moment, actually boasted shamelessly and raised the price. Wang Can waved his right hand and smiled coldly. "What qualifications do you have to raise the price? Do you really think we are fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered? At worst, I will just give up on this departed spirit fruit." You don't want it. The corner of Xiao Chen's lips curled up as he tossed out a departed spirit fruit. Then he flicked his finger, and a strand of purple saber chi shot out. The saber chi shattered the departed spirit fruit with a loud bang. Black death chi immediately surged out, forming boundless, thick clouds that spread out in all directions. The originally formless death chi now turned into thick, dark clouds that spread for a kilometer without showing any signs of dissipating. Kassier, the hearts of the countless corpse race and ghost race cultivators shattered at the same time as they looked at the shattered departed spirit fruit. This was a departed spirit fruit, not a rock. It was worth cities and could not be measured. Yet, Xiao Chen destroyed it without batting an eye. You, Wonkin gaped, flabbergasted. He stammered for a long time, unable to say anything. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, Brother Wonkin, didn't you say that you don't want it? Why are you so agitated? Screw you. I was just saying it. Just saying it. And you really King destroyed it. Yet, you still ask me why I am so agitated. Wonkin could not help cursing in his heart. However, he did not dare to say anything more. He feared that if Xiao Chen was upset, he would destroy the only remaining departed spirit fruit as well. A murderous intent flashed in Wei Hua's eyes. He lowered his head and sent a voice projection to a certain person. Then, without changing his expression, he stepped forward and said, I offer 100,000 black astral coins and 5 rank 3 spirit veins. To you, this is a very fair price. At this moment, Xiao Chen already held the upper hand. Qing Cheng was very reluctant, but she had no choice but to accept this reality. She clenched her teeth and said, I offer 100,000 black astral coins and 10 rank 3 spirit veins as well. 200,000 black astral coins and 15 rank 3 spirit veins. Wei Hua did not hesitate to raise the price again, clearly determined to obtain the departed spirit fruit. When the two arrived earlier, they must have brought the younger generation to search for departed spirit flowers and obtained some spirit veins along the way. Xiao Chen did not say anything. He looked at Qing Cheng, his meaning clear. If you do not raise the price, this departed spirit fruit will be the other party's. How hateful! Qing Cheng was now gnashing her teeth in hatred, feeling so much regret that her intestines turned green. Originally, she thought that by working with Xiao Chen, with so many of her clansmen and some trump cards, she would definitely be able to suppress Xiao Chen. After the matter was over, she wanted Xiao Chen to spit out everything with interest. Who could have expected such a situation to occur? What kind of person did he invite? Everything was fine, but he actually dug such a big hole for him. However, not raising the price now was out of the question. After putting in so much effort, she had already lost so many people before reaching the treasury hall. If she still could not obtain the departed spirit fruit, she would suffer a great loss. 200,000 black astral coins, 15 rank 3 spirit veins, and a sage grade essence increasing pill that your human race needs. Both sides were bidding, neither giving way. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and watched the two sides compete. The more vicious the competition, the better. 500,000 black astral coins, 20 rank 3 spirit veins, a sage grade inner vest, and a sage grade essence increasing pill. Finally, Wei Hua's heart sank, and he named a price that Qing Cheng could not raise. At such a price, Qing Cheng's expression changed. After hesitating for a long time, she did not continue bidding. Such a price already surpassed the value of the departed spirit fruit. It was not worth it at all. Wei Hua was practically using up half of the resources she had. She did not know what Wei Hua was thinking. When Wei Hua saw that Qing Cheng did not say anything, he smiled and said, Young Master Xiao, what do you think of this price? Hand over the departed spirit fruit. Ha! Naturally, I, Xiao Chen, am very satisfied with such a price. However, I will have to delay the transaction for a while." The smile on Xiao Chen's face faded. At the end of his words, his expression turned cold. With a flip of his hand, he placed the departed spirit fruit in his universe ring. Then he instantly turned around. Myriad heaven divine fist, deities descending, tenfold combat prowess. A divine light descended from the sky and entered Xiao Chen's body. His aura soared infinitely, and the resplendent light on his fist was as dazzling as the sun. Bang! When Xiao Chen punched, his fist immediately clashed with Kuei Dou's full power strike. This Kuei Dou took advantage of the moment. The two sides raised the price to sneak behind Xiao Chen. When Wei Hua announced the final price, Kuei Dou thought that Xiao Chen would relax, so he immediately launched a sneak attack in the time it took for a spark to fly. However, Kuei Dou did not know that with Xiao Chen's spiritual sense, he could see everything that happened around him in his mind. Not only had Kuei Dou noticed Xiao Chen long ago, but he had also sensed the plot between Xiao Chen and Wei Hua and had been waiting for a long time. A thunderous roar echoed throughout the place, deafening many people for a short period of time. The instant the two fists clashed, Kuei Dou immediately suffered a great loss. For the sake of maintaining the speed of his attack, he could only use 60% of his vital qi. However, Xiao Chen had been storing up power and waiting for a long time. Not only did the myriad heaven divine fist merge his vital qi, mental energy, and heavenly laws, but it also increased his combat prowess tenfold. Kuei Dou vomited a mouthful of blood. "Cassier! Cassier!" The bones in his right arm shattered. This arm would definitely be crippled for the time being. Kuei Dou's body flew back like an arrow and smashed into the ground, creating a large pit and kicking up a cloud of dust. With the tenfold combat prowess gone, Xiao Chen's boundless aura vanished as well. His white robes fluttered. Aside from a special sharpness, there was nothing special about him. Xiao Chen swung his slightly sore arm without anyone noticing. He felt startled in his heart. A cultivator with a pure physical body was truly horrifying. Even if Kuei Dou only used 60% of his strength, it was already frightening enough. If it were another person standing here, that person would definitely be smashed into a meat patty. However, Kuei Dou ran into Xiao Chen, a well-prepared Xiao Chen. Kuei Dou could only blame himself for being unlucky. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and ignored the shocked people around him. He put away the puppet snake and somersaulted in the air, leaping out of the encirclement of the two races and landing firmly on the ground. "Come out and trade," Xiao Chen said calmly. Wei Hua looked at Kuei Dou, who fell into a deep pit and stood up in a sorry state. His lips twitched involuntarily as he silently flew out. The two faced each other and placed the items they wanted to trade into a spatial ring before their eyes. Then they stretched out their hands and pushed. They each controlled their own spatial rings and pushed them towards the other with the speed of an old ox pulling a cart. The cultivators of the two races stood in a row behind them. They did not hide the killing qi in their eyes at all, clearly eager to try. The two spatial rings brushed past each other, and the two sides immediately pulled over the other's spatial rings. "Kill him," Wei Hua said through clenched teeth. He did not even bother looking at the departed spirit fruit in his spatial ring as he retreated at his fastest speed. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators did not need Wei Hua to say anything. They were already filled with rage. The instant Wei Hua retreated, attacks rained down on Xiao Chen. Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram. Xiao Chen, who had been prepared for this long ago, gently pushed off the ground and moved backward. A light flashed in his eyes. The purple thunder true fire and the lunar true flame chased each other, forming a magnificent flame diagram. The 8 trigrams for divisions and Yin-Yang condensed into a world of its own, blocking all the attacks. Boom! In just an instant, the Taiji Yin-Yang flame diagram turned into a golden light and disappeared. However, this short moment was enough for Xiao Chen to do many things. Chapter 838. roaming dragons, 9 transformations. Change! Change! Xiao Qin shouted, and his body split into 9. Then the 9 figures changed again, turning into 81 figures. Under Xiao Chen's control, each figure spun around quickly, kicking up gusts of wind and forming 100-meter-tall tornadoes as they flew forward. Immediately, sand and rocks flew in front. When one looked around, the 81 tornadoes carried countless leaves and dust as they surged forward. The hidden Xiao Qin became even harder to distinguish. After him, naturally, Wei Hua, Wang Can, Qing Cheng, and the others would not let Xiao Qin off so easily. 100 inferior-grade martial sages led countless demonic corpses and Yin soldiers in pursuit. Bang! 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 The tornadoes were shattered by the powerful attacks, and the clones inside were instantly killed by the Yin soldiers and demonic corpses. The ghostly Yin soldiers howled in the wind. Since they did not have physical bodies, they flew the fastest. They kept chasing relentlessly, bobbing up and down in the clouds. The tornadoes shattered one by one. When there were only 8 tornadoes left, Xiao Qin made a prompt decision. He whistled, and the strong wind stopped. The 8 figures merged into one in the air. Xiao Qin tilted his body and dove down, widening the distance between him and the group behind him. When Wei Hua and the others saw that Xiao Chen's clones were all destroyed, joy flashed on their faces. Then they increased their speed again. The group slowly closed the distance. Just as they were about to catch up to Xiao Qin suddenly stretched out his hand. 72 beams of light flashed from the ground. When the beams of light merged, the universe banner appeared in Xiao Chen's hand. Then he smiled gently, and electric light burst out from under his feet. His speed suddenly doubled. When the black flame sovereign snake, which had been locked up for a long time, discovered that the restriction had disappeared, it immediately soared into the air and spat out black flames. Miserable cries resounded. The cultivators of the 2 races that had chased after Xiao Qin were immediately unlucky, becoming the target of the black flame sovereign snake's rage. Arrows still remained in the black flame sovereign snake's body, causing it to bleed continuously. Furthermore, it had been locked up for such a long time. Its rage and rage were easy to imagine. Black flame, sovereign snake, quickly retreat, quickly retreat. Wang Can shouted, trying to gather the corpse race, group together, and retreat. However, the situation was chaotic. The black flame, sovereign snake, charged forward ferociously. As it opened its mouth, it shot out flames, completely disrupting the ferocious group. Fortunately, this was the Sage Mark Monument's inner world. If one died, one would only be sent out. Otherwise, one would suffer great losses. When Qing Cheng saw that white figure leaving calmly in the distance, her eyes turned cold. She stretched out her hand and beckoned. 8 spirits, carrying a white palanquin, appeared. Qing Cheng pushed off the ground and flew into the palanquin. Ji Chen and Spirit by Chen, Spirit, Shizhan, Corpse, Ji, Ghost Spirits by N-Star, Race, Ji, Qing Cheng instructed. The 8 ghosts lifted the white palanquin and quickly moved forward. Ji Shizhan and by Su sighed speechlessly. Ever since Qing Cheng made her debut, she had never failed like this. She had been schemed against so many times. First, along the way, the various spirit veins' origins were plundered. Then, Xiao Qin used them to fight the corpse race. Finally, the situation was even worse. When Xiao Qin retreated, he directly released the black flame, sovereign snake. The group immediately lost more than half its members. When they went to the treasury hall, they would not be able to compete. More importantly, after putting in so much effort and bringing along 2 soul reapers, they still could not obtain the departed spirit fruit that they thought they would obtain. Everything had failed. Given her pride, she would definitely not be able to accept this. After Shao Qin put away the universe banner and released the black flame, sovereign snake, he left in a much more relaxed manner. A berserk black flame, sovereign snake, was not easy to deal with. It would already be pretty good if the two races could clean up the mess. Even if they could spare some effort to chase after Shao Qin, there would not be too many people. If there were only a few people, there would be no need to fear him. Shao Qin's harvest this time could be said to be very fruitful. Right now, he had 7 million astral coins and 600,000 black astral coins. In total, he had 13 million astral coins. With such wealth, he was no weaker than any noble clan scion or sect inheritor. Wei Hua's sage-grade inner vest was not much. However, it was better than nothing. It was an additional layer of defense. As for the lunar cassia tree and dragon mark fruits in the immortal spirit ring, with so many spirit veins helping them mature, Ao Jiao smiled happily and busied herself. After Shao Qin left the Sage Mark Monument, he would see the lunar cassia tree blooming. The 5 dragon mark fruits would also be more than 800 years old. After expending so many spirit veins' origins, it was all worth it. Suddenly, Shao Qin's footsteps stopped. He looked up and saw a dim light suddenly hovering in front of him. When the light stopped, Shao Qin squinted and looked carefully. 8 wandering spirits, carrying a white palanquin, floated quietly in front of him. "Young Master Shao, good move. Qing Qing really underestimated you. As the ancient said, suffering a loss is a blessing. Qing Qing will remember today's loss for life." Qing Qing's cold voice came from the palanquin. There was not much sorrow or joy in it. It seemed extremely calm. Shao Qin carefully sized up this white palanquin. He had long felt that this palanquin was extraordinary. Now, it looked like it had some extraordinary speed at the very least. However, he did not know if it had any other functions. When Shao Qin heard Qing Qing's words, he did not react. His expression remained calm as he said, "Miss Qing Qing is too serious. Actually, between you and me, if we ignore the death throne, there is no unresolvable conflict between us. No wonder you are so careful. It turns out that you knew long ago that the secret of your throne was exposed. Even though I cannot obtain the departed spirit fruit, I have to obtain the death throne today." Qing Qing formed hand seals in the palanquin, and 2 cold winds blew. The 10-meter-tall black and white soul reapers arrived before Shao Qin in a flash, holding cold, black scythes. Black and white soul reapers, according to the legends of the Immortal epoch, are one of the 10 great Yin masters of the underworld. They have many incarnations. Before an ordinary person dies, they will draw their soul into the underworld river to undergo the 6 paths of reincarnation. Naturally, the black and white soul reapers that my ghost race refined cannot compare to the legendary soul reapers. However, they are still as strong as medial-grade martial sages. I advise you not to resist or think of fleeing. Your speed cannot compare to the 8 ghost palanquin. Qing Qing, who was in the palanquin, enunciated every word extremely coldly. Shao Qin sized up the black and white soul reapers and smiled faintly. "What strange confidence! Have you not thought about why I dared to leave with you even though I knew you had trump cards? Even if that black flame sovereign snake had not appeared, you would not have been able to obtain the departed spirit fruit and the death throne. This is because I will never take the initiative to enter a dangerous situation if I am not confident." Shao Qin opened his hand, and an ancient lamp appeared in his palm. Then he bit the tip of his tongue and sent a mouthful of essence blood containing a large amount of mental energy into the wick of the lamp. The flickering flame lit up, and the ancient lamp drifted gently into the air. Rings of light appeared behind the ancient lamp. The mysterious inscriptions on the ancient lamp gave off a jade-green light. An illusory figure became increasingly clear in the light. The immortal Tao honors life, boundlessly rescuing people. Once I recite the scriptures, all the great sages praise me. Twice I recite the scriptures, and withered bones come to life. Immortal chi shrouded the illusory figure as it recited the mysterious scriptures. The scriptures contained the ghost Tao of reincarnation, the power to deliver all living things from suffering. Clumps of light quickly drifted away from the black and white soul reapers' bodies. The light on their bodies slowly weakened. Person cleansing scripture! Ching Cheng exclaimed in a fluster from the palanquin. Then she quickly formed hand seals and called back the black and white soul reapers. In just a short while, the black and white soul reapers had lost 50 to 60% of their strength. With a swoosh, the white palanquin directly fell from the sky. The palanquin overturned and tilted. The 8 strands of wandering souls that were carrying the palanquin were directly expiated by the expiation scripture. Shao Qin revealed a smile on his face and calmly put away the ancient lamp. Then he took a big step forward, stepping on electric light and disappearing from this place. Qing Qing leaped out of the palanquin with an extremely unsightly expression. With a flick of her hand, she released the 8 wandering souls and lifted the white palanquin again. Qing Cheng looked in the direction that Shao Qin had taken. After a long time, she did not give chase in the end. This time, her defeat was simply too embarrassing. She had already lost miserably in the first place. In the end, she had even foolishly charged forward and allowed herself to be trampled on. Shao Qin had obtained the ancient lamp from where the evil king died. It was a king-grade secret treasure. Clearly, a half-sage would not be able to refine it completely. After Shao Chan advanced to martial sage, he took some time to refine it on his way to the Kunlun mountain range. Although he could not bring out the full might of this secret treasure with his current cultivation, after using it for a while, Shao Qin gained a rough understanding of the effects of this lamp. However, he could not help but feel somewhat disappointed. This lamp was called the Reincarnation Lamp. It was made from the fragments of a magic treasure from the Immortal epoch. After mending the formations and adding in new materials, it was refined into a secret treasure suitable for cultivators. In reality, most secret treasures above sage grade were made from the fragments of magic treasures from the Immortal epoch. First Senior Sister, Shui Lingling's Purple Bow, and In Cheong's Heavenly Downpour Umbrella were like this. The Reincarnation Lamp continued the main function of the original magic treasure, summoning the souls of immortals to chant the Taoist cleansing scripture to purify the evil energy of remnant souls. A perfectly good king-grade secret treasure became useless, just like that. Aside from having some restraining effect on the ghost race, it was not very useful to cultivators of the other races. It was somewhat unfortunate that this was a king-grade secret treasure. Any king-grade secret treasure in the Kunlun realm would fetch a sky-high price in an auction. Only emperor-grade secret treasures were stronger than king-grade secret treasures. However, emperor-grade secret treasures were normally used by the various sovereign sects and clans to protect their headquarters. They would not take them out easily. Without Emperor Wu's cultivation, one would not be able to bring out the might of an emperor-grade secret treasure. For people of Shao Chen's cultivation, king-grade secret treasures were the most suitable secret treasures. However, perhaps after refining it completely, the Reincarnation Lamp might have some other uses. After all, it was left behind by the evil king. Shao Qin raised his head and looked at the distant pillar of light reaching into the sky. Anticipation flashed in his eyes. He wondered what kind of surprise the treasury hall would have. There were still 5 more days before Shao Qin would be sent out of the Sage Mark Monument. He had to rush over. Chapter 839. Shao Chen muttered to himself for a while before descending from the sky and sitting cross-legged on the ground. He started recovering his energy. He intended to use Thunder Dragon Steps to rush over after he recovered to his peak state. Shao Chen circulated the Purple Thunder Divine incantation, and the surrounding spiritual energy slowly poured into the 300 heavenly sage laws in his body. The heavenly sage laws hungrily absorbed the spiritual energy of the world. The color of the heavenly sage laws slowly turned denser and fuller. The electric light around Xiao Qin spread out uncontrollably, forming a faint light screen. After a while, Xiao Qin opened his eyes, and a brilliant light flashed in them. After advancing to martial sage, his recovery speed was much faster than before. The amount of energy he could store was also incomparable to before. Electric light burst out from under Xiao Chen's feet. He did not hesitate to execute Thunder Dragon steps and dash through the air. With a raise of his leg, he crossed 5 kilometers. The wind held by his ears. As he moved like a meteor chasing the moon, Xiao Qin could clearly feel a resistance restricting his speed. He did not feel this resistance when he burst out over a short distance. However, once he moved a long distance, he could feel it easily. This was the void barrier of the Kunlun realm. Unless he shattered space and entered the void, he would find it hard to increase his speed. If he forcefully increased his speed, he might even injure his physical body. Xiao Chan thought for a while and discovered that with his physical body he should be able to endure another 20% increase in speed. However, this was already his limit. Even if he wanted to increase his speed, he would not be able to do so. Xiao Chun moved at full speed without any worries. He moved like a bolt of lightning, shooting through the sky. The people below could only see 2 lightning dragons flickering in the air. They could not even see the figures on them. Soon, Xiao Chen left the vast savanna behind. The pillar of light in the distance became increasingly clearer. A look of joy appeared in Xiao Chen's bright eyes. At this rate, he should be able to reach the treasury hall before sunset. Suddenly, Xiao Chen, who was dashing through the sky, stopped. The sounds of fighting attracted his attention. After traveling such a long distance, Xiao Chen noticed more than one fight. However, he did not stop. The reason why the battle below could attract his attention was because the protagonists of both sides were not insignificant figures. 3 deity race keepers of light led 10 odd deity race cultivators, clashing intensely with the fiend race team led by the Peacock King's descendant, Kong Yuan. Kong Yuan's side seemed to be in a bad situation. The 13 guardians of the celestial race didn't seem to be very famous within the celestial race. Their radiance was suppressed by the divine son and divine daughter. But in the outer races, all of them were extremely talented youths. With Kong Yuan's strength, he could easily defeat one of them, and he could barely defeat 2 of them. Facing 3 of them would be too much. Being able to guarantee that he would not be defeated within 1,000 moves was already an extraordinary feat in addition. The overall strength of the God Race warriors was much higher than that of the Monster Race warriors. Although Kong Yuan's troops had the advantage in numbers, it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. It's Xiao Qin. Quickly release the signal and inform the people in other directions. The mental energy of the deity race cultivators was extraordinary. The moment Xiao Chen paused in the air, he was immediately discovered by the 3 guardians. One of them shook his right hand, preparing to release the signal. Xiao Chen frowned. Originally, he had not planned on meddling in other people's business. However, he instantly made up his mind. With a flip of his hand, the Soul Slayer bow appeared. Xiao Chen knocked an arrow and drew the string. He executed this series of actions very smoothly. All his vital qi surged out without holding anything back. It seemed like thunder rumbled in Xiao Chen's body. A formless aura gathered in the surroundings as the bowstring was drawn. The Soul Slayer bow was as mighty as its vital qi. However, Xiao Chen rarely used its full power. The damage to his arm would be too great. At most, he would only need to draw it 3 more times before his arm would be crippled. However, at this moment, Xiao Chun could not care so much. Xiao Chun released his fingers, and the arrow tore through the air, disappearing in a flash. Before the guardian with his right arm could release the signal, the arrow pierced through his wrist. His wrist was pierced by the arrow, the tail of the arrow trembling, bringing with it a massive force, directly pulling him to the ground. The arrow pierced through his wrist and stabbed into the ground along with his arm. Buzz! Only at this moment did the sound of the arrow tearing through the air reach Xiao Chen's ears. The speed of this arrow had already surpassed the speed of sound by several times. Xiao Chen returned the bow to the universe ring. Just as that guardian's leg and arm were pinned to the ground by the arrow, electric light surged under Xiao Chen's feet, and he quickly gave chase. Xiao Chen's speed was frighteningly fast. The guardian's heartbeat suddenly sped up. His sea of consciousness surged, and his strong mental energy turned into thousands of weapons flowing with holy light. These weapons surged out, trying to stop Xiao Chen for a moment. Dragon tone art break! Xiao Chen roared, and the sound waves turned into a dragon-shaped shockwave surging out. Kasie! Kasie! The thousands of weapons shattered, turning into boundless holy light spreading everywhere. However, they could not stop Xiao Chen at all. The deity race guardian, who had just pulled the arrow out of his wrist, endured the intense pain. Before he could get up, he saw a bolt of lightning flashing in the spreading holy light. In the next moment, a white figure leaped out. This person held a saber hilt with both hands and pointed the long saber downwards. The saber carried the momentum of lightning as it pierced through the guardian's inner vest, pinning him to the ground again. However, this time the target was not the wrist but the heart, a fatal spot for any cultivator. A light flashed, and this guardian died on the spot, teleported out of the Sage Mark Monument. When Kong Yuan saw Xiao Chen make a move, he could not help rejoicing. His figure trembled, and he revealed his fiend body, a huge blue peacock flickering with light. Kong Yuan firmly suppressed the two guardians, who were preparing to retreat, forcing them to retreat. Since Xiao Chen made a move, there was naturally no need to think about anything else. He pushed off the ground and worked with Kong Yuan to deal with the two guardians. Kong Yuan alone could defeat two guardians. With Xiao Chen's help, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Soon he killed the two. The blue peacock gave off a berserk aura. Under its beautiful appearance was an immeasurable ferocity. After the three guardians died, the remaining deity race cultivators decisively scattered and fled. They did not linger or fight to the death. Kong Yuan reverted to his human form and looked at Xiao Chen, who sheathed his saber. His expression was somewhat complicated. However, he still said happily, "Many thanks for your help this time." The two had a grudge in the heavenly, divine spring. Just as they were about to fight, Di-Wuk had appeared and stopped them. Now, coincidentally, they worked together because of the deity race. Xiao Chen was not that narrow-minded. He did not have any irreconcilable grudges with Kong Yuan, nor did they have any conflicts of interest. If Xiao Chen could gain another friend through this matter, it might not be a bad thing. Xiao Chen said calmly, "You are too polite. With your strength, you should be able to leave after revealing your fiend form." Kong Yuan glanced at the remaining fiend race cultivators and sighed softly. "The treasury hall is not far away. It is too unfortunate that these clansmen have stopped here. If I can put in some effort, I will do my best as well." Xiao Chen felt excited. To think that Kong Yuan could still think about his clansmen in such a situation, he could be considered a man. His status as the Peacock King's descendant was not in vain. Let's not talk about this for now. Why are those deity race cultivators attacking you here? Xiao Chen asked out of curiosity. They were almost at the treasury hall. What were they doing here instead of searching for treasures? Kong Yuan's expression turned sullen. He said, "Di-Wuk led the deity race's people and arrived here first. They guarded the passageways and blocked all the cultivators of the other races who tried to get close. What a big move. With the strength of one race, he wants to block all the cultivators of the other races? Di-Wuk's appetite is too big. Could it be that he wants to take all the secret treasures in the treasury hall by himself? Xiao Qin voiced his doubts. Kong Yuan shook his head and explained, "It's not like that. As long as the cultivators who enter the treasury hall obtain 2 secret treasures, they will automatically be sent out. The treasury hall has a total of 5 floors. Each floor has a king-grade secret treasure. What Diwuk really cares about are these 5 king-grade secret treasures. His main purpose is to delay us. Of course, if we are weaker, we will be chased out of the Sage Mark Monument." Xiao Qun found this strange. He asked, "The Sage Mark Monument opens once every 10 years. It has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Could it be that the secret treasures in there have not been emptied out?" Kong Yuan could not explain this, either. He replied, "I'm not sure about that. In any case, every 10 years, there will be more secret treasures in the treasury hall. There will be at least 5 king-grade secret treasures. There are rumors that the Sage Mark Monument does not exist alone. There are strong and mysterious existences in there as well. Those secret treasures were collected or refined by those strong existences." Xiao Qin thought for a while. If there really was a mysterious existence that could freely enter and exit the Sage Mark Monument, how strong would that existence be? After all, when the Sage Mark Monument opened, even sovereign martial emperors could not get close. Only inferior grade martial emperors could enter. Could that mysterious existence be even stronger than sovereign martial emperors? However, these were just guesses. Perhaps there was no mysterious existence. I want to meet up with the Fox King's descendant, Yuan Su. Let's part ways here. If we meet in the treasury hall, we can compete based on our own abilities. How about that? When Kong Yuan saw that the group of fiend race cultivators had more or less recovered, he prepared to take his leave. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "That would be for the best. Goodbye." As Kong Yuan watched Xiao Chen leave, his expression slowly turned grave. A fiend race old man behind Kong Yuan walked over and said, "This Xiao Chen really has some of the elegance of the Qing Emperor back then." With just a raise of his hand, he destroyed a deity race, Keeper of Light. Such strength is probably no weaker than Diwuk's. Kong Yuan calmly analyzed, "He does indeed have some of the elegance of the Qing Emperor. However, compared to Diwuk, he is still lacking. Earlier, he killed that Keeper of Light mostly because of the bow in his hand. In the end, his accumulations are still lacking. Even now, Diwuk's true strength is a mystery. However, Xiao Chen's potential is very terrifying. Who could have imagined that he had only been in the Kunlun realm for a mere 2 years?" After parting with Kong Yuan, Xiao Chen met with several outstanding talents who had broken through the deity race's blockade. All of them rushed to the treasury hall. Chapter 840. There were only 5 king-grade secret treasures. Diwuk had already taken the lead. Who knew how long the traps and restrictions along the way could hold him back? Xiao Chen could not help but quicken his pace. After half a day, he finally arrived at the doors of the vast treasury hall. The doors were already open. The words "Treasury Hall" were carved on the doors, looking very charming. Several cultivators who passed by Xiao Chen paused their gazes on him for a while. Their eyes revealed an expression that could not be underestimated. Xiao Chen dared to face off against Diwuk at the Sage Mark Monument, stood at the top of the Sage Mark Monument for the first time, and kicked away the insufferably arrogant Diwuk. After this matter, the name White-Robed Xiao Chen would definitely spread. When the descendants of the Qing Emperor reappeared, they would definitely stir up a storm. Shifting his gaze away from the doors, Xiao Chen stepped in. After he entered, he arrived at a spacious room. Ancient murals decorated the walls, and there were 9 passageways in the surroundings, waiting for cultivators to choose. Choose whichever one you like. Every passageway will lead to the Great Hall where the King-grade secret treasure is. Then you can enter the next floor from there. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring. Back then, the Thunder King had been here. Naturally, Ao Jiao was familiar with this place. Just as Xiao Qin was about to choose, someone suddenly walked in from outside, attracting his attention. That person had a horrified expression. Clearly, he had not expected to meet Xiao Qin like this. Xiao Qin glanced over. After he saw this person's appearance, he ignored him and calmly chose a passageway. Inside the spacious room, an indescribable hatred flashed in by Wu Xue's eyes. In just half a year, the other party was not even interested in looking at him. There were stone doors on both sides of the passageways. Xiao Qin entered a few stone rooms. Aside from puppet fragments, there was nothing on the ground. Clearly, someone had already taken away the secret treasures. After that, Xiao Qin could not be bothered to enter the stone chambers anymore. Instead, he continued on his way. Every now and then, he would encounter some combat puppets. He did not hold back and dealt with them as quickly as he could. After a while, he arrived at the main hall that led to the lower level. In the middle of the hall, there was a stone platform with a sword box on it, flickering with electricity. Above the stone platform, sparks formed by lightning drifted down, appearing extremely strange. There was a small teleportation formation hovering in midair. It was flickering incessantly. It should be the path to the upper levels. Ao Jiao, who was in the Immortal Spirit Ring, rubbed her head and said doubtfully, "Strange. Why did Diwuk not take away this king-grade secret treasure?" Xiao Qin thought for a while and answered, "It's not strange. Diwuk and Tianyu, she can only take 4 secret treasures together. They will definitely give up one." Aside from Xiao Qin, there were a few others in the great hall. They stared at the extreme thunder sword on the stone platform, revealing a strong desire to possess it. Xiao Qin sized them up and discovered that he had met most of them once before. On the west side were 2 men and 1 woman. They were the merfolk from the chaotic demonic sea. In the great hall, these 3 showed the most urgent expressions. On the north side was a fiend race cultivator in blue. Before he left his name on the Sage Mark monument, Xiao Qin had noticed this person. According to Ying Qiong, this person was known as the Azure Wolf Swordsman. He was the scion of a fiend race noble clan in the profound domain. The Azure Wolf Swordsman's accumulations were no weaker than a human sovereign noble clan's. The Azure Wolf King was the Emperor Wu of the Azure Wolf race. Although the Azure Wolf King was not a sovereign martial emperor, the Azure Wolf race had no connection to the fiend domain. It was rumored that the Azure Wolf King had an irreconcilable grudge with the Fox King and was chased out by the Fox King. Not far away were 3 deity race old men. Although they were not keepers, they were at least 100 years old. By relying on their deep cultivation and mental energy martial techniques unique to the deity race, they could contend with the demonic geniuses of the younger generation. The person across from Xiao Qin was a middle-aged man radiating a sharp sword intent. As he gazed at the sword box, he appeared extremely fervent. As a swordsman, his greatest wish was to obtain a good sword. This middle-aged man's sword intent inspired some fear in Xiao Qin. He even suspected that this person had condensed a sword soul. The Kunlun realm was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It was not surprising that there were some hidden experts. There were also several cultivators of the various races trying to fish in troubled waters. All of them had fervent gazes. Perhaps there were experts that Xiao Qin had not noticed among them. However, this had nothing to do with Xiao Qin. He did not practice the sword and did not have any desire to possess the treasure sword in the sword box. He could only obtain 2 secret treasures here. He could not waste this opportunity on unrelated secret treasures. Outstanding talents of the Kunlun realm. I am the princess of the chaotic, demonic seas, merfolk race, Yao Yan. My race is currently facing a calamity. Would everyone please let us have this extreme thunder sword? This little girl represents the merfolk race and owes everyone a favor. We will definitely repay it in the future. Just as Xiao Qin prepared to leave, That merfolk race girl stepped forward and pleaded sincerely. Xiao Qin could not help but laugh in his heart. This girl was really naive, with the allure of a king-grade secret treasure, who would listen to her pleas and back out. Haha, do you take us for fools? The Azure Wolf swordsman laughed mockingly. What does the life and death of the merfolk race have to do with us? The middle-aged swordsman stared straight at the sword box on the stone platform. It was like he did not hear what this girl said. He muttered to himself, "This sword is called the Extreme Thunder Sword? This name is really unpleasant. After I obtain it, I should change it to a new name." As for the three deity race old men, they were even more overboard. They smiled coldly and said, "The merfolk race dares to come to our Kunlun continent and issue orders? Do they think our deity race does not exist? Your Highness, why the need to speak so much with them? Just directly attack." Mu Yin, with his explosive temper, could not help getting angry. However, Mu Yan's big brother, Mu Lei, showed a grave expression. He did not say anything. If they tried to attack, their chances of success would be 50% at best. How could it be that simple? Young Master Xiao, along the way, I've heard many people talk about you. Back then, our merfolk race once helped the Qing Emperor in his conquest of the sea. As a descendant of the Qing Emperor, can you show some consideration for old times? Suddenly, that merfolk race girl's voice rang out in Xiao Chen's mind. He could not help but give her a strange look. That merfolk race girl did not avoid Xiao Chen's gaze. She continued to send a voice projection. My race is really at a critical juncture of life and death. We urgently need this extreme thunder sword to save us. If you help this little girl today, the merfolk race will definitely remember your kindness. Xiao Chen remained silent, not saying anything. He had never been a person who would let a few words affect his heart. However, at this moment he hesitated. The mysterious sword box lay quietly on the stone platform. The flaming flowers formed by electric light fell down. The outstanding talents from all over eyed this extreme thunder sword like a tiger watching its prey. Even if Xiao Chen could not use it, it would fetch a sky-high price at an auction. This sword was not some unpopular weapon. The merfolk race's Princess Yao Yen showed some anticipation in her eyes as she quietly waited for Xiao Chen's answer. Never mind. If the merfolk race really helped the Qing Emperor back then, I will repay this kindness today. I only hope that you are not lying to me. Ghosts and demons roamed the world. Who was real and who was fake? How could one listen to the words of one clan? Xiao Qin took a risk and trusted the other party for now, acknowledging his identity as the Qing Emperor's descendant. After all, there were some matters of the past that he needed to face. Many thanks, young Master Xiao. Princess Yao Yen heaved a sigh of relief. With Xiao Chen's help and the three of them working together, they had a 70% chance of obtaining the extreme thunder sword. The atmosphere was rather quiet. No one dared to make a move rashly. They all looked cautiously at the others, secretly storing up their auras. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. He did not have time to waste here. He needed to use his lightning-quick means to obtain this extreme thunder sword. Electric light flashed under Xiao Chen's feet, and he instantly stood on the stone platform. He looked at the sword box below, but did not touch it. He looked calmly at the surroundings and said, I, Xiao Qin, want this sword. If anyone is not convinced, feel free to come and fight me. Seeing that a bladesman like Xiao Qin actually became interested in this extreme thunder sword, the expressions of everyone present immediately turned uncertain. Everyone saw Xiao Chen's strength for themselves. The explosive power of his thunder dragon steps far surpassed that of most of the cultivators here. However, if Xiao Chen could make them retreat with just one sentence, they would not be convinced. No matter what, Xiao Chen was just a lower realm genius who came to the Kunlun realm 2 years ago. What bold words! Do you really think that you are the Qing Emperor? Even Di Wuk would not dare to say that, the Azure Wolf Swordsman said with a sullen expression. The Green Wolf Swordsman said with a sullen expression. He was lacking a suitable treasure sword. How could he allow others to encroach on it? The middle-aged human swordsman's gaze was like lightning, as sharp as a sword. He placed his right hand on his sword hilt, and his sword intent buzzed, kicking up sword winds in the surroundings. The three deity race old men felt boundless hatred for Shao Qin. The old man in the middle smiled coldly and said, "Everyone, there's no need to say anything to him. Just attack together. Let this fellow know the consequences of being arrogant." The inferior grade martial sages of the various races who were trying to fish in troubled waters all had eager eyes. To them, the more chaotic it was, the better. Clearly, Shao Chen's words had achieved their goal. Suddenly, a resplendent light lit up. An unparalleled sword intent blew like a berserk wind. The wind howled endlessly, spreading throughout the entire hall. It seemed like a strand of sword chi streaked across everyone's eyes. The first to make a move was actually the middle-aged swordsman. The moment he made a move, he revealed his strong strength. That berserk sword intent gave the many cultivators the illusion that he was unblockable. Don't make a move first. When you find an opportunity, take the sword yourself. Yao Yan, who was preparing to help, suddenly heard Shao Chen's voice projection in his mind. He could not help but stop what he was doing. Shao Chen's pupils constricted, and he narrowed his eyes. He stared directly at that strand of unparalleled sword intent. The unparalleled saber chi in his body clashed with it without fear. When the light scattered, a sword appeared in front of Shao Chen. The middle-aged swordsman had already pressed forward and brandished his sword intent. A sword light flowed, and he executed an exquisite sword technique that complemented his consummation sword intent. Sword lights flickered in 72 directions. The middle-aged swordsman's figure appeared. Every sword strike was real without any falsehood. The middle-aged swordsman was very satisfied with this move of his. He specialized in fast swords, and his sword techniques focused on speed. If one wanted to break his sword, one had to be faster than him. Chapter 841. Shao Chen placed his right hand on the saber hilt and instantly executed the Qing Emperor's drawing the saber. The middle-aged swordsman immediately felt like he had nowhere to hide. His 72 sword images were clearly attacking Shao Chen. However, when Shao Chen placed his right hand on the saber hilt, everything seemed to turn around. The middle-aged swordsman's heart sank, and his expression changed greatly. Relying on his swordsman's intuition, he decisively withdrew his move and retreated. The 72 sword images merged together, and his figure flashed. The Azure Wolf Swordsman, who leaped after the middle-aged swordsman, was not as lucky. The middle-aged swordsman brushed past him. However, one advanced while the other retreated. Electric light flickered, and the slender lunar shadow saber attacked from an angle that the Azure Wolf Swordsman could not have imagined. The saber light struck the Azure Wolf Swordsman's side, and the strong, lightning-attributed energy exploded. The Azure Wolf Swordsman's body flew into the wall of the hall like a cannonball. In the time it took for a spark to fly, everything happened unimaginably fast. In the time that Shao Chen used his saber to attack, one of the two swordsmen was forced back, and the other was knocked back. Deity's Nation, inextinguishable spear. Deity's Nation, inextinguishable sword. Deity's Nation, inextinguishable divine halberd. The three deity race old men worked together to execute the deity race's combination martial technique that Shao Chen had seen before. A golden light appeared behind them, materializing a boundless sea and a divine kingdom rising and falling. Shao Chen did not dare to underestimate them. He immediately took out his greatest trump card, Using lightning-fast means, he attacked before this combination martial technique was perfectly connected. Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram. The purple thunder true fire and the lunar true fire chased each other, forming a charming scene. As they spun, they merged into the world. The vertical Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram pressed forward with a strong might. Bang! 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 There were 3 explosions, and the 3 weapons infused with divine light turned into light and scattered. However, the light of the Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram did not diminish. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and pointed. The Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram swept out at an even faster speed, crashing into the 3. The golden sea behind him surged with huge waves as it roared ferociously, resisting with all its might. But in the end, the divine kingdom sank to the bottom of the sea, never to come out again. The sea disappeared, and the 3 god race elders each spat out a mouthful of blood. The Taiji Yin-Yang Flame Diagram pushed forward, crashing into the walls of the hall, and severely injuring them once again. Xiao Chen used his absolute strength and showed no mercy, suppressing these 3 people without any fear. This was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. With a flash of light, the 2 flames returned to his eyes. 2 loud sword chimes resounded. The green wolf swordsman and the middle-aged human swordsman charged over again. Dragon is as long and dragon. Dragon. Dragon took. Dao was. Xiao Tian's Chen's S star. Said. And on. 2 dragon-shaped saber, Qi, came out of the long saber, flying at the middle-aged swordsman. Even Emperor Wu could only receive this dragon playing with pearl head-on. This move was sufficient to fluster this middle-aged swordsman for a long time. After dealing with this troublesome middle-aged swordsman, Xiao Chen brandished a saber and clashed with the azure wolf swordsman. When the saber and sword clashed, sparks flew, creating a dazzling light. Boom! When the many cultivators below saw that Xiao Chen could not extricate himself, they rejoiced. They swarmed over and flew towards the stone platform. Xiao Chen turned his head to take a look, and the blazing purple thunder true fire in his right eye poured out, forming a sea of fire. The ferocious purple thunder true fire instantly struck the cultivator at the very front. The group of people on fire immediately cried out miserably. They fell to the ground and rolled around in pain, trying to think of all sorts of ways to extinguish the fire. The fire was ferocious. The electricity contained in it crackled and flickered, forcing the group of cultivators back. When the 3 merfolk race cultivators saw this fire, their eyes lit up. They were clearly very excited. Still not retrieving the sword? What are you waiting for? Seeing the 3 stunned people, Xiao Chen could not help but feel angry. The purple thunder true fire would not be able to block this group of people for long. After the middle-aged swordsman dealt with the twin dragons playing with pearls, it would be difficult for him to retrieve the sword. At this moment, this was the best opportunity to retrieve the sword. He could not understand why the 3 were not moving. Princess Yao Yen was the first to startle to her senses. Her figure flashed, and while everyone was busy, she effortlessly placed the sword box into her universe ring. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief and withdrew the purple thunder true fire. After knocking back the azure wolf swordsman, he slowly landed on the stone platform. Looking at the empty stone platform, the others recovered their wits, startled awake. It turned out that Xiao Chen and the merfolk race had worked together. They were so high-profile just to attract everyone's attention. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and hid the sharpness in his eyes. He looked around and smiled faintly. The treasure already has an owner. There is no need to continue fighting. The middle-aged swordsman who had withstood the dragon playing with Pearl appeared to be in a sorry state. He wiped the blood off his lips and glared at Xiao Chen angrily. Then his figure flashed and entered the transportation formation in the air. the Azure Wolf swordsman, felt very depressed in his heart. He kept feeling like he had been tricked, played by Xiao Chen in front of so many people. As for the three deity race old men, they had already left this place long ago. Xiao Chen had utterly defeated them in one move. There was no place for them to show their old faces. The many martial sages who were preparing to fish in troubled waters all looked at Xiao Chen with some fear. Then they quickly entered the transportation formation in the air and went to the lower levels. Soon, only Xiao Chen and the three merfolk race old men remained. Princess Yao Yan walked over leisurely with a blue headscarf in her hand. She handed it over and said, "Words cannot express my gratitude for your great kindness. This headscarf is not a secret treasure. However, it has a refreshing and calming effect. I hope young master, Xiao, will accept it." Xiao Chen received the headscarf and felt a chill invade his body. His entire body trembled as he felt his earlier fatigue vanish. His body now radiated boundless vitality. This headscarf did not look as ordinary as the other party made it out to be. Xiao Chen put it away and muttered to himself, "We will meet again if we are fated to. Goodbye." Seeing Xiao Chen vanish from the transportation formation, Mu Yun could not help asking, "Your Highness, why did you not clarify things with him? He clearly used the purple thunder true fire earlier. That is much stronger than the extreme thunder true fire. If he was willing to help, the hidden danger of the merfolk race could be resolved." Mu Lei nodded as well and said, "I think this Xiao Chen is not a cold-blooded and emotionless person. If he is willing to help just because of the favor my race had with the Qing Emperor 10,000 years ago, he might be willing to help to the end." A bitter look flashed in Yao Yan's sky-blue eyes. She smiled faintly and said, "Never mind. With the extreme thunder sword, the problem should be more or less resolved. It has already been 10,000 years. Even I am embarrassed to say it out loud. How could I have the face to say it?" Xiao Chen did not feel too much about repaying his ancestors' kindness while he was at it. As for whether the other party was speaking the truth or not, he would just believe it for now. On the second floor of the treasury hall, the number of stone rooms with secret treasures that had not been taken away increased. Xiao Chen was not in a rush to go up. Unlike the others, Xiao Chen did not focus on the king-grade secret treasures on this trip to the treasury hall. If possible, Xiao Chen hoped to choose one or two high-quality, sage-grade secret treasures that were compatible with him. Firstly, king-grade secret treasures were not easy to obtain. Secondly, after obtaining them, he would be temporarily limited by his cultivation. It would be difficult to refine them and bring out their full effects. Most importantly, after obtaining them, he might discover that they were unorthodox, secret treasures similar to the reincarnation lamp. What Xiao Chen needed were secret treasures that were compatible with him. For example, his empty hands lacked a pair of gloves that could increase his speed. Previously, after he advanced to superior grade martial monarch, the gloves had lost their effects and had been abandoned in the universe ring for a long time. Furthermore, the shoes on Xiao Chen's feet no longer had the effect of increasing his speed. It was a pity that Lun Yu had to reforge these two secret treasures. Occasionally, the ocean blue headscarf on Xiao Chen's forehead would circulate a cold qi around his body, giving him a refreshing and comfortable feeling. Under the influence of the headscarf, Xiao Chen, who had been somewhat anxious, calmed down completely, becoming as traceless as the autumn water. Xiao Chen's mind became clearer about his own desires and desires. His mind reached his heart and removed many of the distracting thoughts. If Xiao Chen still did not know that this headscarf was a supreme treasure, he would really be a blockhead. Why does this headscarf look like Neptune's headscarf? Could it be that Neptune's relic was really passed down? Ao Jiao sized up the blue headscarf on Xiao Chen's forehead as she commented. Bang! In the stone room, Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and punched the combat puppet guarding this place. Then he struck it one last time, shattering it into countless pieces. Xiao Qin opened the wooden box in the stone room and took a look. He was somewhat disappointed to find a sword brimming with spiritual energy inside. After walking out of the stone room, Xiao Qin took some time to ask, "What is Neptune's headscarf?" According to legend, Neptune had a very violent temper. He was a tyrant through and through. Once he flared up, the entire Kunlun realm's sea would surge with huge waves. Tsunamis would surge up to the sky, and torrential rain would fall incessantly. Several innocent life forms would die. For the sake of helping him control his temper, his daughter put in a lot of effort. She traveled all over the Forbidden Lands at the bottom of the sea and knitted a headscarf for him. Every time he flared up, he would wear it, saving many lives. Xiao Qin felt slightly surprised. If this headscarf really was Neptune's headscarf, then his earlier help was not worth the reward. He had thought that it was just an ordinary headscarf, so he did not hold back and casually accepted it. Actually, when he thought about it carefully, the merfolk race had dominated the chaotic, demonic sea for so many years. How could the merfolk race's princess casually give out some gifts as thanks? As Xiao Qin searched the various stone rooms for the secret treasures he needed, he chatted with A.O. Jiao about the past of the sea. Thus, he did not feel bored. 10,000 years ago, the Neptune Palace was incredibly powerful. Neptune's strength was even more terrifying. It frequently interfered with the continent and even had the intention of overthrowing the continent. The Qing Emperor entered the sea 3 times and fought with it before he finally defeated Neptune. Then he moved the human factions over and fought for many years. Finally, he swept away all the remnant factions of the Neptune Palace. When A.O. Jiao spoke of the secrets of the past, Xiao Qin felt the strength of the Qing Emperor once again, sweeping through everything unrivaled. The strongest sovereign martial emperor of the post-ancient era truly lived up to his reputation. Chapter 842. Cassier. This time, when the wooden chest opened, Xiao Qin's eyes lit up, revealing intense interest. The chest contained 3 black arrows covered in talisman scripts and flowing with light. Xiao Qin scanned them with his spiritual sense and felt the surging energy contained in them. There was also a jade strip beside the 3 arrows. Xiao Qin held the jade strip in his hand and sent his spiritual sense into it. Then he obtained some information about the arrows. This arrow was called the Starbreaker arrow. As its name suggested, it could pierce through a star. Of course, the star here was definitely not a very large star. However, based on the might described in the jade strip, this arrow could pierce through a Grandmaster-level martial sage if they did not pay attention. The might of this arrow was focused on breaking. No secret treasure would be able to block it. The only problem was that it could only be used once. As Xiao Qin continued reading, the smile on his face grew wider. Unexpectedly, the Starbreaker arrow's forging method, the materials needed, how to carve the formation scripts, the ratio of fire, and many more were listed in great detail. That's it. Inside the treasury hall, Xiao Qin chose the first secret treasure he needed. Perhaps the others would be lucky and obtain an unknown king grade secret treasure from Diwok. However, Xiao Qin did not envy them at all. Being able to obtain a secret treasure like the Starbreaker arrow that suited him made this trip worthwhile. Furthermore, there were the various spirit veins that he obtained earlier, the black astral coins that he extorted from Wei Hua, and 3 mature departed spirit flowers. This trip to the Sage Mark Monument was a perfect one. After putting away the Starbreaker arrow, Xiao Qin started to choose his second secret treasure. Xiao Qin had a relaxed mood and walked quietly. Occasionally, he chatted with A.O. Jiao about some interesting things. Xiao Qin formed a sharp contrast with the other cultivators in the treasury hall, who were filled with surging killing qi and in a rush. As a result, he slowed down a lot. By the time Diwok and Tianyu she reached the 5th floor, he had barely reached the 3rd floor. Even the ghost race and corpse race cultivators, who were slower than Diwok, had already caught up to him. rushing to the 5th floor in a hurry. They feared that Di-Wuk would clear the final hurdle and snatch away the last precious king grade secret treasure. When Xiao Qin arrived at the transportation formation on the 3rd floor, he saw an empty stone platform and shattered combat puppets littering the ground. Needless to say, Di-Wuk had already taken away the king grade secret treasure. Most of the stone rooms on the 4th floor had not been opened yet, giving Xiao Qin more choices. The combat puppets inside also grew stronger. Xiao Qin had reached a point where he could not defeat them without going all out. As the 10-day deadline for entering the Sage Mark Monument approached, Xiao Qin still had not chosen his second secret treasure. Along the way, he came across some secret treasures that tempted him. However, after careful consideration, he chose to give them up. There are practically no cultivators left in the treasury hall. Most of them had obtained 2 secret treasures and were sent out of the Sage Mark Monument. However, Xiao Qin still had not come out. Outside the Sage Mark Monument, the sky was clear for thousands of kilometers around. The sun shone brightly. Occasionally, figures came out of the Sage Mark Monument, revealing joyful expressions. Not to mention the Treasury Hall, the Sage Mark Monument was filled with natural treasures. As long as a cultivator was not particularly unlucky, they would gain something. Boom! A golden radiance shot out from the Sage Mark Monument. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the glow on the figure's body seemed even more dazzling. Di-Wuk came out. Those 2 took away all the king-grade secret treasures of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. I wonder if they took away the king-grade secret treasures of the 5th floor? Immediately, the cultivators of the various races below cast their gazes over. Everyone knew about the deity race's actions around the Treasury Hall. Nearly all the cultivators heading to the Treasury Hall were obstructed, giving Di-Wuk and Tianyushi an advantage. Soon, another beam of light shot out of the Sage Mark Monument. The sons of the human race's 3 holy masters, the fiend races Kong Yuan and Yuan Su, the ghost races Qing Cheng, the corpse races Wang Ken Wei Hua, and the other demonic geniuses, all walked out with extremely unsightly expressions. Based on the expressions of these young cultivators, the result was clear. Di-Wuk and Tianyushi had snatched away the 4 king-grade secret treasures. At this thought, everyone sucked in a deep breath. Of the 5 king-grade secret treasures, aside from the one that Xiao Qin had given up on, the deity race had taken away the rest. Di-Wuk's schemes and strength were displayed once again, becoming the biggest winner of this trip to the Sage Mark Monument. Where is Xiao Qin? Why is he not out yet? After the corpse race's Wei Hua landed, he immediately asked the cultivators of his race about Xiao Qin's whereabouts. Wei Hua's lips twitched as he did his best to suppress the rage in his heart. The same scene happened with the ghost race and the deity race. They all asked about Xiao Qin's whereabouts. Their gazes all turned sullen, like they wanted to eat someone up. Clearly, they were not concerned about Xiao Qin. After receiving a negative answer, they all burst into an uproar, their expressions filled with doubt. Perhaps the biggest winner of this trip to the Sage Mark Monument was Di-Wuk. However, in terms of who was in the limelight, even Di-Wuk would be suppressed by Xiao Qin. First, Xiao Qin kicked Di-Wuk away at the Sage Mark Monument. Then he single-handedly tricked the ghost race and corpse race experts. After that, Xiao Qin repelled the various experts in the Treasury Hall and helped the Merfolk race obtain the Extreme Thunder Sword. He treated the king-grade secret treasures as nothing, giving them away so easily. Xiao Qin's unconventional actions, his exceptional sharpness, and his strong strength. Whether the deity race's people admitted it or not, Xiao Qin already had some of the glory of the Qing Emperor back then. However, at this moment, all the young demonic geniuses of the various races had come out. However, Xiao Qin was nowhere to be seen. This was very strange. Hence, A scene that had not occurred in 1,000 years appeared in front of the Sage Mark Monument. The cultivators of the various races had already obtained something. However, because of one name, they all stood guard in front of the Sage Mark Monument, unwilling to leave. The people waiting outside for Xiao Qin to come out to vent their frustrations felt very conflicted when they did not see Xiao Qin come out. Xiao Qin, who was in the treasury hall, felt conflicted as well. He felt conflicted over the fact that the deadline was approaching, but he had not found a high-quality sage-grade secret treasure like the Starbreaker arrow that moved him at first glance. After putting in a lot of effort, Xiao Qin knocked out 3 combat puppets in a stone room on the 5th floor. Then he arrived at the treasure chest containing the secret treasure. If Xiao Qin still could not find a secret treasure that moved him, he could only return and pick a secret treasure that he had in reserve. When the wooden chest opened, a folded black cloak appeared. This cloak was different from ordinary cloaks. Its design was exquisite, and the materials it was made of were exquisite. There were feather shoulder pads on the shoulders. Silver threads were embedded at the edges of the cloak. It did not look like the silver of the mundane world, but some kind of rare and precious metal. Xiao Qin raised his hand and stretched out. Then he slowly unfolded the folded black cloaks. Without sending in his spiritual sense, he could move the secret treasure. However, if he wanted to bring the secret treasure out, he had to place a spiritual mark on it. After sizing up the appearance of the black cloak, Xiao Qin rather liked it. It gave off a desolate and cold feeling. Then Xiao Qin took out the jade strip from the chest. His expression turned grave. The information in it was rather simple. It only said that this black cloak was called Tianhai. Such simple information made Xiao Qin hesitate. He did not know how to choose. His intuition told him that this cloak should be extraordinary. However, his rationality told him that the risk was not worth taking. The secret treasures that he had chosen earlier were much more reliable than this. Tianhai. Xiao Qin muttered the name a few times, trying to figure out the effects of this cloak from its name. However, he still could not make heads or tails of it. Let's choose this one. This cloak was made of at least 23 superior materials. The feathers on the shoulder pads should not be for decoration. At the very least, it should be able to increase your speed. When Ao Jiao saw that Xiao Qin could not make up his mind, she helped him analyze it. "All right, I'll listen to you." Xiao Qin nodded. He stretched out his hand and put on the cloak. After that, he placed his own brand on it. Before he could even experience its effects, he was teleported away by an invisible force. His field of vision suddenly opened up. Xiao Qin floated to the ground and looked around. He discovered that he had returned to the outside world. However, the situation seemed a little off. Outside the Sage Mark Monument, the cultivators discussed why Xiao Qin had not come out yet. This was especially so for the cultivators of the ghost race and corpse race. They even started cursing. Xiao Qin had tricked these 2 races too badly. Most of them had not even reached the treasury hall before they were sent out. This was especially so for Wei Hua. Right now, he was thinking of how to get back a huge sum of money from Xiao Qin. 500,000 black astral coins was not a small sum. If not for his ancestor holding a high position in the Corpse God Palace, he would not have been able to afford it. If not for Wei Hua's ancestor holding a high position in the Corpse God Palace, he would have been the underworld fire sovereign, one of the 4 great corpse monarchs. Wei Hua even felt like jumping into a river. The corpse race and ghost race cultivators stared at the Sage Mark Monument with fiery gazes. The moment they waited for Xiao Qin to come out, they would immediately surround him and attack him, not caring about morality or justice. Even if they could not kill Xiao Qin in front of everyone, they would at least beat him up and take back all the benefits he had obtained, destroying his reputation. Di Wuk was in a pretty good mood. However, when he thought about how Xiao Qin had used his words to slap him in the face before the Sage Mark Monument and sent him flying with a kick, he could not help feeling angry. No matter how much self-restraint she had, she could not help getting angry, waiting for Xiao Qin to come out. If he could not vent this anger in his heart, it would be unbearable. Today, Xiao Qin's reputation would fall, and he would be taught a lesson. Di Wux's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at the sage mark monument, not saying a word. Xiao Qin felt that something was wrong with the situation. The reason was not that these people hated him to the bone or that undisguised killing intent. Instead, it was that even though he had already come out, these people did not seem to notice him, still staring at the sage mark monument. After thinking about it, Xiao Qin concluded that the problem should be with the activated Heavenly Sea cloak that he wore. Heavenly Sea, Heavenly Sea. Xiao Qin suddenly understood the meaning of these two words. What else could it be other than deceiving everyone? Even with Di Wux's mental energy, he could not sense Xiao Qin's presence. Xiao Qin's heart could not help but pound wildly. It looked like he had made the right choice. Chapter 843. They hated him to the core and were waiting for him to come out so that they could swarm him and beat him to death without a care for the consequences. Xiao Qin's lips could not help but curl up in a smile. With the Heavenly Sea cloak, it looked like he did not need to use the backup plans that he had prepared. Those backup plans were rather troublesome and might not be able to completely hide from this group of people. It's great now. Just you wait. Even if you wait to the end of the world, you will not see me come out. However, I will not let you vent your frustrations. The next time they met, as long as it was not such a grand scene, Xiao Qin was confident of leaving easily. Xiao Qin did not know how long the Heavenly Sea cloak's ability to deceive everyone would last. He felt his heavenly sage laws depleting quickly. This was not a good place to linger. After glancing at Ying Qiong and his first senior sister, Xiao Qin sent a voice projection to each of them. He told his first senior sister that he was safe so that she would not worry about him. Then he arranged to meet with Ying Qiong 3 days later to discuss some matters. Without waiting for the two to reply, Xiao Qin pushed off the ground and left this place with a calm expression. The group of people in front of the Sage Mark Monument continued to wait bitterly. They kept imagining how they would teach Xiao Qin a lesson after he came out. 1 hour later, Xiao Qin was already far from the Kunlun mountain range. As he flew quickly in the air, the feathers on his shoulders slowly unfurled, forming 2 exquisite wings. Each wing created a long trail of air, raising his speed by about 20%. Xiao Qin fiddled with the wings and discovered that he could control the direction of the 2 wings. With a thought, he immediately adjusted his direction. This discovery delighted Xiao Qin. The speed at which he adjusted his direction was several times faster than before. If he could familiarize himself with it, it would be very beneficial in battle. The cry of a goshawk came from ahead. Xiao Qin wanted to test out the Sky Sea cloak's abilities. As he looked at the goshawk, a faint killing intent rose in his eyes. All of a sudden, the goshawk shrieked and flapped its wings to fly back in a hurry. It flapped its wings so fast that some of its feathers fell. Xiao Qin frowned and couldn't help but stop. Had he been discovered? It seemed like the ability to deceive everyone would lose its effect once killing intent was revealed. The excitement in his heart slowly calmed down. Xiao Qin entered deep thought. He had to find a time to figure out the flaws in his plan to deceive everyone. Otherwise, he would be in deep trouble at the critical moment. As the sky darkened, Xiao Qin changed out of the Sky Sea cloak and put on a normal cloak. He then arrived at a city controlled by the Ying family. The Sky Sea cloak was too dazzling. There were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the profound domain. One might run into a Grandmaster-level martial sage at any time and snatch away their treasures. At that time, one would not even have a place to cry. 3 days later, Xiao Qin waited for Ying Qiong in an inn in the city. After verifying that the person before him was really Xiao Qin, Ying Qiong's face filled with horror. He could not figure it out. "How did you come out?" In Cheong could not help asking out of curiosity. The people of the ghost race, corpse race, and deity race are going crazy. The 10-day deadline passed long ago, and they still have not waited for you to come out. Xiao Qin raised his eyebrows slightly. The image of those people suppressing their frustrations appeared in his mind. However, they could not wait for him to come out, suppressing all their frustrations in their hearts. Xiao Chen could not help smiling faintly. What's wrong? Are they still there and not leaving? In Cheong gave Xiao Chen a strange look. Then he said, You are not embarrassed to say that? You humiliated Diwok, and the ghost race and corpse race suffered so miserably. They even wished that they could skin you alive. How could they leave so quickly? Xiao Chen really did not mean to say that. The existence of the death throne made it hard to resolve the grudges between him and the ghost race and corpse race. The matter of the departed spirit fruit was just a fight between the two sides. If Xiao Chan were the one who lost, he would be in an even worse state than these people. As for Diwok, given his ambition, Xiao Chun had long since become a thorn in his side. The conflict between them was even harder to resolve. It was practically impossible for them to coexist. Since Xiao Chun was Diwok's enemy, how could he feel any guilt for everything he did? If he showed any mercy, he would be the one consigned to eternal damnation. Xiao Chen took a sip of wine and said, I did not ask you to come here today to talk about this. Look at these. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and wiped it on the table. When he moved his hand away, there were 10 flowers as gentle as moonlight on the table. A refreshing fragrance wafted out, spreading throughout the entire room. Ing Cheong was slightly stunned. Then he exclaimed in shock, These are the lunar cassia flowers from a peak-grade spirit tree. Where did you get them? Furthermore, there are 10 of them in one go. Naturally, Xiao Chen could not tell Ing Cheong where the lunar cassia flowers came from. So Xiao Chen took a sip of wine and said calmly, The lunar cassia flowers have better healing effects than rank 9 medicinal pills when consumed directly. Several sage-grade medicinal pills use the lunar cassia flowers as the main ingredient. Ing Cheong picked up a lunar cassia flower and sniffed it. She closed her eyes and revealed an immersed expression on her jade-like face. After a while, she opened her bright eyes and said, I am very clear about the value of the lunar cassia flowers. There is no need to say more. You want to sell these lunar cassia flowers, right? 10 lunar cassia flowers can be sold for a good price. However, it is not a price that will move you. You should keep them for yourself. At this point, Ing Cheong suddenly stopped. A strange expression appeared on her face. She looked at Xiao Chen and said, Don't tell me you still have a large number of lunar cassia flowers? Otherwise, you would not have called me over alone. Xiao Chen was startled in his heart. This woman was indeed very intelligent. With just a little thought, she had already guessed the situation. More or less. I have a large number of lunar cassia flowers that I need you to sell. However, you need to ensure that my identity does not leak out. I can give you these 10 lunar cassia flowers as compensation. Ing Cheong smiled faintly and stretched out her hand, not standing on ceremony as she accepted the 10 lunar cassia flowers. She said, This is simple. The flourishing Heaven Pavilion in Leisure Feather City will be holding a large auction soon. At that time, all sorts of people will be there. Given my position there, I can help you get rid of a large number of lunar cassia flowers without anyone noticing. Leisure Feather City was one of the 3 largest cities in the profound domain. Cultivators of the various races gathered there. There were countless experts in the city. If there was an auction there would definitely be a lot of good things. Xiao Chen felt excited. Right now he was quite wealthy. There were many things that he wanted to buy and was qualified to participate in the auction of that level. Suddenly, Xiao Chen thought of something. He said, I recall that the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion is a business of your Ing clan, right? Ing Cheong denied it. No, it is a joint business of the sovereign noble clans of the various races. In name, it is managed by an emperor venerate. However, in reality, 12 holy venerates manage the daily affairs. Below the holy venerates are 36 heavenly venerates. Below them are the great venerates of the various branches. I am one of the 36 heavenly venerates. The authority I can use is rather large. There is no problem in helping you. However, how many lunar cassia flowers do you want to sell? Xiao Chen thought for a while before replying calmly, about 500. Ing Cheong sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Xiao Chen incredulously and said, 500? Did I hear wrongly? Don't tell me you found a laurel tree that had just bloomed? When the lunar cassia tree bloomed, white flowers would fill the treetops. However, when the wind blew, the flowers would fall off easily. In less than 30 days, all the lunar cassia flowers would be gone. This was another reason why lunar cassia flowers were so rare. 500 lunar cassia flowers would cost tens of millions of astral coins. This was not a small number. If the number were not too large, Xiao Chen would not have sought Ing Cheong's help. How could several dozen lunar cassia flowers attract any attention? The lunar cassia tree was a treasure trove. It bloomed only once every 500 years. If it were not so valuable, Xiao Chen would not have taken the risk to scam the ghost race and the corpse race. Ing Cheong recovered his wits and smiled bitterly. It looks like your harvest in the Sage Mark Monument is no worse than Dewuck's. I have to think carefully about the faction that can buy 500 lunar cassia flowers in one go. Is it very difficult? Xiao Chen asked with a frown. Ing Cheong said after some thought, it is not difficult to sell them. However, if you sell so many lunar cassia flowers at the same time, the other party will definitely lower the price. I have to help you think about it carefully. Otherwise, you will suffer a huge loss. Just wait for my news. After Ing Cheong left, Ao Jiao asked in confusion, Xiao Chen, why are you in such a rush to sell the lunar cassia flowers? You already have tens of millions of astral coins now. You do not lack money. Xiao Chen put down the wine cup in his hand and explained the cost of teleporting from the Kunlun realm to the Sky Dome realm is astronomical. I definitely have to bear the cost myself. Furthermore, after returning to the Sky Dome realm, I intend to stay there for a long time before leaving. I need to prepare sufficient cultivation resources. When Ao Jiao heard Xiao Chen's explanation, she did not say anything more. However, she still reminded him, you just advanced to Martial Sage and you want to return? The Sky Dome realm is not like the Kunlun realm. Your cultivation speed will definitely slow down. Now is the time for the younger generation to put in effort. It was not easy for you to catch up to them at the starting line. In the past, Xiao Chen's cultivation had always lagged behind his peers. He had been chasing after them bitterly. Now that he had reached the new starting line of Martial Sage, he finally stood at the same starting line and charged into the Martial Emperor's Tao together. If Xiao Chen gave up on this opportunity to advance at the same time, he would have to spend a lot of effort to catch up. Xiao Chen stood up and walked out of the booth. He said, don't worry. Since I already decided to return, naturally, I have already considered everything clearly. I'm just reminding you, not worrying about you. Don't overthink. Xiao Chen smiled and did not say anything. Inside the room of the inn, Xiao Chen cultivated calmly, consolidating the foundation that he had just advanced to Martial Sage and familiarizing himself with the various changes that came with advancing to Martial Sage. Xiao Chen, who was in a leisurely mood, did not know that the rumors about him in the outside world had already caused a huge commotion. 10 days had already passed. The ghost race, corpse race, and deity race cultivators waited for 3 days. However, they still did not see Xiao Chen appear. Their patience had worn thin. With nowhere to vent their frustrations, one could easily imagine how depressed these people were. However, most of them were worried about why Xiao Chen did not come out of the Sage Mark Monument. Since ancient times, no one had ever heard of someone not appearing in the Sage Mark Monument. Chapter 844. The moment the Qing Emperor's descendant appeared, he was trapped in the Sage Mark Monument. There were all sorts of rumors flying around. The most exaggerated one was that Shao Qin had already fallen in there. However, this version was the most widespread. Occasionally, when Shao Qin ate at an inn, he heard others talking about this. He could not help but find it laughable. Half a month later, Ing Qiong appeared before Shao Qin, somewhat fatigued. When he saw Shao Qin's complexion and aura becoming more stable, he could not help but feel that Shao Qin's improvement was really fast. I contacted the buyer. The buyer is the Kunlun Realm's alchemy holy land, the Medicine God Valley. 500 lunar kasha flowers are valued at 25 million astral coins. The main reason is that the quantity is too large, enough for them to use for 10 years. Shao Qin calculated in his heart. Then he raised his head and said, "This is a very fair price. You must have put in a lot of effort. When are we going to make the transaction?" 10 days from now, at leisure, Feather City. We have to depart now. A warm look flashed in Ing Qiong's eyes. He continued, "The elder in charge of the transaction would like to meet you." "Of course." I did not reveal your identity. Shao Chen decisively rejected. "Never mind. I am not interested in these people." Only Shao Chen dared to reject the Medicine God Valley's alchemy grandmaster. The Medicine God Valley was not strong, but they had connections with the various experts of the Kunlun realm. Even martial emperors could not guarantee that they would not need the Medicine God Valley's help when they needed it. They would have to ask the Medicine God Valley for some medicinal pills, refining fees. Ing Qiong did not find this strange. This was not his first day knowing Shao Qin. He said, "All right, I'll help you reject him." Leisure Feather City towered in the sky. Aside from the main city, there were 5 satellite cities connected by rainbow bridges. Many people came and went in the sky. The city was vast and majestic, looking very prosperous. Cultivators of the various races gathered in the main city. Experts of the deity race, corpse race, ghost race, human race, and fiend race could be seen everywhere. This was especially so because of the flourishing Heaven Pavilion's auction. Martial sage experts could be seen everywhere in the city. The threshold for this auction was extremely high. Without being a martial sage, one would not be allowed to enter. This was the auction with the highest standards in the continent. If Shao Chen wanted to find an auction of a higher standard than this, he could only search the boundless starry heavens. Grandmaster-level martial sage auctions were common there. Because it was necessary to be cautious, Shao Chen put on the Sky Sea cloak, and he did not stand out in the crowd. There were many true inheritors of the noble clans and sects here. A secret treasure that looked dazzling would not attract too much attention when compared to the many king-grade secret treasures of the noble clans and sections. After Ing Qiong helped Shao Qin trade for the lunar osmanthus flower, he used his heavenly venerate status to easily arrange a VIP room for Shao Qin. Let's meet again after the auction. If I can obtain the position of holy venerate in the flourishing Heaven Pavilion, my status as the Ing clan successor will be stable. I still have some work to do, so I'll take my leave first. As the 2 old men took Ing Qiong away, Shao Qin entered deep thought. This was the first time he felt the pressure of this girl. It was not easy to obtain the position of holy venerate from the 36 heavenly venerates. Furthermore, Shao Qin still had to deal with the overt and covert attacks of the clan. The power struggle of a large clan was truly chilling. Just as Shao Qin stepped into the flourishing Heaven Pavilion, a few gazes that he did not sense slowly left his back. Is it him? It is him. On the way here, Ing Qiong did not have a second person accompanying him. Good. 500 lunar osmanthus flowers in one go. He definitely has a mature lunar osmanthus tree. Perhaps he also has a peak-grade immortal spirit ring on him. Otherwise, he would not be able to make the lunar osmanthus tree mature. The VIP room was luxuriously decorated, dazzling with gold and jade. However, it did not look tacky at all. Xiao Qin carefully looked around and discovered that the sparkling decorations were not the gold, agate, or jadeite of the mundane world. Instead, they were other rare metals, each of which was very expensive. They added a sense of weight to the room, diluting the tackiness of the extravagance. The exquisite wooden chair was covered in the soft fur of a superior grade spirit beast. When Xiao Qin sat on it, he felt very comfortable. He could not help leaning back. Spirit fruits unique to the Kunlun Mountain were placed on the ebony tables and chairs at the side. A faint fragrance came from them, making one drool. From the details, one could see the difference between this auction and the previous auctions. A light flickered on the wall in front, and the scene on the auction platform turned into a water screen before Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin felt surprised. This should be a formation laid by Emperor Wu, who cultivated a water-attributed cultivation technique. To them, this was just a small trick. A spirited old man walked up the auction platform. His hair and eyebrows were all white, and his eyes gleamed with vigor. As he walked, he exuded a calm aura. Xiao Qin was mildly startled. This was actually a superior grade martial sage. Furthermore, his cultivation was very deep. This old man's family name is Hong. I am the MC of the flourishing Heaven Pavilion's auction this time. Everyone here is a reputable person. Everyone here knows the rules of the auction. If there are any disputes, please resolve them outside the flourishing Heaven Pavilion. Even without this old man saying it, you all know the consequences of those who maliciously disrupt the order of the auction. After old Hong finished speaking, he did not bother with any nonsense and directly revealed the first auction item. The first auction item is a Peak Sage grade medicinal pill, the Rising Dragon Overlord pill. It contains the bones of 18 different inferior dragons, refined by a Grandmaster Alchemist of the Medicine God Valley. After consuming it, it can increase a cultivator's aura by 30%. If one is lucky, it might even produce a trace of dragon might. After giving a simple introduction of the medicinal pill's effects, old Hong announced the starting bid. The starting bid is 180,000 astral coins. Each increment must be no less than 20,000 astral coins. Xiao Qin raised his eyebrows. Auctioning off a Peak Sage grade medicinal pill at the start was really bold. Medicinal pills were normally divided into 9 ranks. Above rank 9 was Sage grade, and above Sage grade was King grade. Above King grade were Emperor grade medicinal pills. As for whether there were teleportation Immortal pills above Emperor grade, Xiao Qin did not know. The Rising Dragon Overlord pill was second only to King grade medicinal pills. In a regular auction, it would not be strange for it to be used as the finale item. Unexpectedly, it was only an opening item here. Xiao Qin was very interested in this medicinal pill. He had consumed the monarch bloodgrass before. His bloodline already contained a trace of an ancient sovereign's aura. If he consumed this Rising Dragon Overlord pill, that arrogant and unparalleled sovereign's aura would be even stronger. 200,000, 200,000, 300,000. The effect of aura on cultivators went without saying. Ordinary rank 9 medicinal pills that could increase a cultivator's aura would be bought by many. As a Peak Sage grade medicinal pill, the Rising Dragon Overlord pill would naturally be hotly contested by cultivators. After selling 500 lunar cassia flowers, Xiao Qin's net worth reached more than 35 million astral coins. He was no less wealthy than a Grandmaster-level martial sage. Xiao Qin was determined to obtain this medicinal pill. However, this place was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. He could not appear to be unparalleled and attract attention. When the bid reached 500,000 astral coins, Xiao Qin started to raise the bid unhurriedly. He did not increase it by too much or too little, just keeping it up like this. When the bid reached 1,500,000 astral coins, only one person remained competing with him. Xiao Chen tested the waters a few times and discovered that only one person followed. So, he suddenly raised the bid by 500,000 astral coins. That martial sage, who had been following Xiaoqin for 20,000 astral coins, immediately stopped following. In the end, Xiaoqin managed to obtain this Rising Dragon Overlord pill for 2,200,000 astral coins. After several auctions, Xiaoqin had gained some experience. If one were to use a sky-high price to scare everyone away, not only would the auctioneer not agree to it, those who weren't interested in the item would also turn their attention to it. Perhaps they might even argue with the auctioneer about it. Xiaoqin could only slowly grind it down until he was certain that there were not many people competing and that he knew the bottom line of the bidders. Only then could he kill it in one strike and obtain what he wanted. Of course, nothing was absolute. This was just a general technique. It was not a law. Soon, a maidservant brought out the Rising Dragon Overlord pill. Xiaoqin paid the bill straightforwardly. Then he held the jade bottle containing the medicinal pill in his hand. After pouring out the medicinal pill, Xiaoqin took a look at the second auction item. He was not interested, so he swallowed the medicinal pill and used this rather boring time to refine it. Boom! The medicinal pill melted the moment it entered Xiaoqin's mouth. Then it split into 18 dragon-shaped energies that rampaged wildly in Xiaoqin's body. Instantly, there seemed to be a tsunami surging endlessly in Xiaoqin's body. As he slowly refined the medicinal energy, Xiaoqin clearly felt the sovereign's aura in his bloodline grow denser, gaining the sharpness of an absolute overlord. Xiaoqin clenched his fists and activated his sovereign's bloodline. A surging tyrannical aura surged out, and there seemed to be 18 berserk dragon roars reverberating in the air. The light in Xiaoqin's eyes disappeared. He closed his eyes and sensed for a while. He gained a new understanding of the sovereign's aura that was originally unfathomable. With Xiaoqin's current aura, he should be able to hold his own against Grandmaster-level martial sages. He would not be suppressed by the other party's aura before the fight even started. Jiao thought to herself, only Xiaoqin can have such an effect. Without the accumulation of a sovereign's bloodline, others would not have such startling improvements in their auras. An inferior-grade martial sage could fight against a Grandmaster-level martial sage with his aura. How shocking would that be? The auction continued. Occasionally, Xiaoqin glanced at the items. Sometimes he even bought things that he had no use for. This made Jiao feel strange. No matter how rich Xiaoqin was, he could not spend it like this. Xiaoqin smiled faintly but did not explain. When he returned, he had to bring something to take care of some old friends. Clearly, he could not return empty-handed. There were many good things in the auction. After Xiaoqin, he managed to win 2 more secret treasures that he was rather satisfied with. One was a pair of jade-white absolute heaven gloves, a high-quality sage-grade secret treasure that could increase one's speed by 20%. The other was a pair of boots that could increase one's speed. Compared to the pair of gloves and boots in the treasury hall, these were slightly inferior. However, they were sufficient. At the very least, their effects would not weaken before he advanced to Grandmaster-level martial sage.